Two.
Yes.
Good. Welcome to the show. Well, we have a lot to discuss today. We will be talking about dead capital. What is dead capital? Oh, are you doing that? The thing. What's it? When I said dead.
Dead.
Okay.
I was going to say dead cat, but okay.
Oh, dead cat. Dead capital. So dead capital is something that has been fronted by a former PS who's very many things now, among them being a lecturer at the University of Nairobi. Dr. Bitang Ndemo wrote a piece just the other day, and he talked about dead capital. And this was basically looking at how people are investing in things that they do not use, and it's just an investment that's lying there idle, and you have basically sunk your investment in your cash into something that you would not be able to recoup. You cannot liquidate it easily when you need it, and yet you don't even use it when you don't, because you don't need it.
Well, the assumption is that everything that falls under the category of capital at some point may require liquidation. One could argue there are certain things that don't necessarily require liquidation.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's true. However, at least there are things that necessarily require to be used.
Yes.
For example, in this example of Dr. Bitang Ndemo, putting up a palatial home in the rural village and you only go there once a year.
Yes. It has very many benefits and it has wonderful returns. Yes, on investment.
On investment.
Yes.
Other investment.
You simply need to broaden your scope
of what investment is and what return is. Okay. So you put up a 25 million shilling monstrosity in Shags. The benefit of that is that you call Mweshimiwa.
Among other things.
And the other benefit is now, because now you have put up this 25 million shilling monstrosity, we want you to keep helping us. So spend at least 1 million shillings every month on the rest of the village.
Well, there's that little detail, but there's also the detail that you may have bequeathed your children an opportunity to do something in the future. Open up a school.
Oh, there.
Or a hospital.
Using that as the basis.
The foundation will have been set.
Okay. Okay. So we'll be discussing that, dead capital, the pros and cons of dead capital. We'll also now be discussing about the interior and the coordination of government, especially in this time of COVID-19. We hope to speak to the Interior PS, Dr. Engineer Karanja Kebisho. And also we shall talk about the deep state. Because there is a man who is the second highest person in the Republic of Kenya who has said that there is deep state.
There is now a deep state.
Yeah, so we'll discuss that as well. But let's fight COVID. We know that Australia is dealing with a serious surge of cases and deaths. New Zealand is also dealing with their own issue. Kenya is also dealing with its own issue.
And even of interest, Russia has registered.
Breakthrough in Russia. And of course, you'll expect the Western media to come out.
It's too soon. We must go through phase 3 first.
Yeah. And also, we had just recently discovered that Russians had hacked into our systems. So clearly, they just stole our IP.
That story of hacking has been on for some time. And why don't they just consider that perhaps Russia was just ahead of them in this particular race before?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, in terms of competition, Russia's always been right up there with them, with the rest of the world in terms of what they've been able to do when it comes to nuclear activity, when it comes to trips to the world beyond space.
And the question one wants to ask is why bring in the discussion of phase 3 trials? Why phase 3? Unbeknownst to many, there's even a phase 4.
I think they're concerned about phase 3 because phase 3 is when now thousands of people essentially would be administered the vaccine, supposedly, and then they would have to wait for a period of time to see what effect then it actually had.
Yes.
Putin has said, for example, that his daughter had tested positive for corona. and she had a temperature of 38 degrees on day one of when now she was administered this vaccine. And after she was administered, her temperature dropped to 37 the next day. And the next day, the temperature now was at a stable 36. And she was able to get round her duties as normal. So he's not just talking about something he doesn't know. He's also talking about something that he witnessed.
It is
live,
true.
live.
But you see, apart from just the numbers, phase 3 trials also gives you diversity. Because there's something that we have to take into account, our individual and personal and group and collective genomes.
Right.
Meaning, this could work with a certain age group. It may not work so well with a certain age group. A certain dosage may work well with a certain people in a certain area. There are all these dynamics.
Even a person of a certain genetic makeup, you will find that it would work on Afro or on people of African descent, and it may not work with people of Caucasian descent
Or Asiatic descent.
Exactly.
Yes.
So that's the reason why.
That's
you
where the
want to
phase
go through
3.
phase 3.
That's where the phase 3 comes in, because and then it's the numbers and the diversity. So it gives you a truer picture of what is likely to happen with this. Yes. So.
Okay. Russia can just basically say that what we are going to embark on is phase 3.
It could be.
The truth of the matter is,
We're just using it. I mean,
what they've done is open up a new frontier.
yeah.
Okay? And we can sit and say, let's wait and see. Because, some people say it's a gamble. Maybe it isn't.
Maybe it's
Because
true.
there are many things that the
But
Russians do that
everything
we
is
don't
a
know.
gamble. Even what the West would come up with would also be a gamble. And they can say, yeah, we're going through phase 3, we're expanding it, but we'll expedite the phase 3.
Eric, you are absolutely right. But you see, one of the things that COVID has done, the race for the vaccine has done, people aren't starting from ground zero.
Yeah.
The dates and the times and the phases often relate to starting from ground zero, where you're trying to figure this thing out from the very beginning. With COVID, that's not what happened. People started from known, meaning we are starting with drugs, medication, prescription intervention that are already known to work.
Yeah.
Now let's move from there and see what else we can do. Yes.
Okay, well, let's look at the numbers around the world. 20,521,644 cases in the world now, with 745,918 deaths and 13,441,743 recoveries. New Zealand seems to be, every time they make an announcement about this, something just seems to be able to slip in the back door and boom, again. 2 more cases found in New Zealand, even after they had said they had been through 102 days of, infection-free.
The 2 cases are from the same family.
Yes, unfortunately.
And they can trace it back to them having traveled to some resort.
And so now the question is, having then been in that resort, who else then could have been infected? And they had not done any tests. So it just seems that, they're getting to the point whereby they say, look, we've been able to contain this thing. And then something out of the blue just seems to be able to come and, nip it again. So maybe they're just going to have to wait this one out and see. Mexico now has recorded the highest number of deaths in a 24-hour period, in a 7-hour period, in terms of percentage and comparative analysis. 6,886 cases in the last 7 hours, with 926 deaths reported so far on the day. We know also that Australia still continues to struggle with this, having seen a spike in the cases over the last couple of days. The most recent number, 414. But what is more worrying for them is that 21 people have then died in the last 24 hours. And this was the report that they gave, their day ending right about now. This is what they've given so far. And so the 21 deaths is a worrisome thing for them, because previously they were recording 2, 1, 3, and now a rise in those numbers.
But you know what is of interest when you look around the world? Here's COVID worrying the living daylights out of us. Mali, they have a full-scale war going on. People are dying. Southern Sudan have similar problems. And just when you thought it was safe to get out of the waters, in India.
Yeah.
So it's like problems never cease, do they?
No, when it rains,
It pours.
Pause.
yeah,
Heavy.
it does.
Heavy rain.
Bucket loads of it.
Oh, yes. it just doesn't cease.
Doesn't let up.
No way at all. So, in that fight against COVID, Kenya is at that place where anybody who comes up with a solution, they'll be our friend.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
But then our friends now become our enemies, the other side as well. Kenya is going to inquire on Russia's virus jab, as you expect. I know that if you hear this, the next thing would be Kenya talking to Russian embassy here and saying, okay,
Let's have a chat.
By the time this thing gets to the papers, Eric, surely that discussion has been
already happened.
Long before it hit the papers, they've already had that discussion.
Yeah, but you can imagine now if Putin was making the announcement yesterday. So there's that whole decision of, officially and diplomatically, before you actually go and seek that conversation with the Russians, it has to come from the highest level.
Well, sure, probably have that discussion. And we heard that CS...
Maybe the president himself sitting down and approving, yes, let's ask them. Because you've got to balance what all this means.
I think CS Mwangangi was quite guarded yesterday when she talked about, where they were in these talks. But you are right. By the time this comes out in the manner in which it has, the conversation probably has already taken place. If we look at Kenya now, with 497 cases yesterday having been reported.
Yeah.
Now, every county of the Republic has reported cases of COVID, with Samburu being the last one, with 10 cases yesterday. So that now takes Kenya to 27,425 cases, and the numbers continue to rise. There's also some likelihood that even after September, which is when it was said that this could be the peak, it's possible that the peak could come later. Just as a piece of information.
All right. It's okay. Yes, I'm ready.
You're ready?
Yeah. We are ready. Yeah, well, we'll be looking at the newspaper headlines shortly. I think we can just dispense of this one, of the coronavirus vaccine and all. The reportage from Western media has, all of it, bar none, has created, of course, that slant of despite scientific skepticism. This is a story on the Standard by AP and AFP reporters in Moscow. Russia yesterday became the first country to clear a coronavirus vaccine and declare it ready for use despite international skepticism. Scientists at home and abroad have been sounding the alarm that the rush to start using the vaccine before phase 3 trials, which normally last months and involve thousands of people, could backfire. All right? So, yeah. And there's a whole conversation of, they hacked into it. I think the unfortunate bit here is when there is a possibility of a breakthrough, but that possibility of a breakthrough will not be taken in just because you still have got to play politics.
Not only that, you see, China has done something almost similar to what Russia is doing. They have actually been not just testing, but using it among the military.
Yep. So we can say that is phase 3 for them.
And the military is huge.
Yeah.
So if you talk about diversity,
They have it.
But that alone, you see, there's this little detail here, okay? That is what has been used for the longest time. There is nothing absolutely wrong in breaking the mold, because that's what's happening here.
Yeah.
And to argue and to say that the Russian scientists don't really know what they're doing, that may be jumping the gun. That may be jumping the gun.
That's not just even jumping the gun. That is...
They are scientists.
Yeah. And they are not just that is small-time scientists.
No.
The impression that will be created here is that, these are second-rate scientists. The Russians are second-rate.
They don't care about human life. They don't care about...
They know what they're
My
doing,
friend.
I would say.
Yeah. Scientists in Russia, even the West tries to smuggle scientists out of Russia to come and use them.
They've been
So
doing it for the longest time.
Yeah. So, anyway, we wish this is a breakthrough for humanity. Whoever gets something going, wherever it comes from, whether it comes from Kenya, from Africa, from the US, from Europe, from China, from Russia, what we need now is some hope. Yeah. And let's just hope that it works. 16 minutes after 6, this is a Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. Let's take a look at the weather, and then we start to take a look at the big stories of the day. Keep it right here.
24/7 around the world non-stop. This is Spice FM.
It's been an uncertain couple of months, and we are still experiencing the effects of COVID-19 pandemic in our lives. However, we're bouncing back. Our resilience like never before has shown even brighter. And in our adaptation to a new normal, we find a purpose to believe in a better tomorrow. Which is why the Standard Group is bringing you the 47 million reasons. It's all about finding something and someone to be hopeful for during this pandemic. From first responders, mental health, unity to hope. We owe it to ourselves to keep going, getting stronger than ever. 47 million reasons, celebrating you and me. You are our reason. And we have 47 million of them. Brought to you by Radio Maisha, Spice FM, Vibes Radio, KTN Home and BTV.
Did you know that water and sanitation related diseases are the leading cause of death for children under the age of 5 in Kenya? Imperial Leather, in partnership with Rotary, has come together to offer support within the low-income communities by donating 10 shillings for every soap you buy
Mostly
towards
cloudy in Nairobi this morning. There's a chance of rain later and even thunderstorms, but we'll have to wait and see what that looks like. Highs of 23 and lows of 14. Okay, and what's happening in Nakuru this morning? It's 14 degrees and partly cloudy, highs of 22 and lows of 13 with expected thunderstorms later on. Eldoret is mostly cloudy at 12. We'll see wet afternoon with highs of 20 and lows of 12. And in Kisumu, it's partly cloudy at 20 degrees, highs of 27 and lows of 19, and a chance of showers there later on as well. It's thunderstorm city in Kakamega, highs of 24 and lows of 15 today. Malindi is mostly cloudy at 24 degrees, highs of 28 and lows of 23. Those partly cloudy conditions will continue for most parts of the day. In Mombasa, light rain showers already being experienced this morning at 23. It's likely to maintain those wet conditions for most of the day with highs of 28 and lows of 22. Let's step out into Kampala where it's partly cloudy at 19 degrees. Thunderstorms expected for later with highs of 27 and lows of 19. It's 22 degrees and partly cloudy in Dar es Salaam. Highs of 30 and lows of 21. It's a warmer day in Johannesburg today at 9 degrees. Highs of 22 and lows of 6 and sunny conditions throughout the day. Lagos, clear skies this morning at 23 degrees, highs of 30 and lows of 22. Paris, clear skies at 23 degrees, highs of 35 and lows of 22, but the rain that is forecasted for the afternoon might just cool things down. In London, it's clear at 23, highs of 33 and lows of 21. And still Tuesday night in New York at 27 degrees. As the sun does come up, they'll wake up to thunderstorms, going through a high of 31 and lows of 24.
Spice FM. Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice
20 minutes
FM,
of
Nairobi.
6 o'clock. Good morning. How are you doing? Welcome to The Situation Room. If you're just joining us, our live stream is up, www.spicefm.co.ke. You can catch us wherever you go on Spice FM KE on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter as well. City Muga, as we go into the big headlines of the day, let's start with the big proverb of the day.
Okay. Anytime you want to say something profound in Kiswahili, you begin by saying, wahenga walisema.
Chambilecho.
Yes, now that's a discussion yet for another day, but however, the wahenga didn't say this. It's just a saying attributed to us Africans. People who drink to drown their sorrows should be told that sorrows know how to swim.
He does.
Let me start again. People who drink to drown their sorrows should be told that sorrows know how to swim.
You know what I said there?
I did.
Those against George Soros. should know that Soros knows
how to swim. He probably owns a couple of swimming pools as well.
Perhaps.
Okay. People who
Drink to
drown their sorrows should know.
They should be told.
So what should they do now?
Just drink.
How
Just
should they?
drink,
How
not
should
with
they
an
kill
intention
the
to forget your
sorrows?
problem.
Just drink. If you have sorrows that you feel you need to dispense with, find another method. Drowning them doesn't quite work.
It's like a proverbial cat.
This one doesn't have 9 lives. This one has hit 12. Just when he thought it was 9.
Boom.
Boom. 3 more to go.
Okay. Big headlines of the day.
Well, it's the one that splashed across all the headlines,
Okay.
or across all the papers today. You can't stop me. Something has also been said about a certain kind of music called reggae. In this case, it's not. It's the deputy president.
Yeah.
And he is defiant, is what the Standard calls him. Deputy President William Ruto ups the stakes in Kenyatta's succession, telling Kajiado leaders that his march to State House is unstoppable. The DP also warned the so-called deep state against attempting to steal his victory.
Yeah.
And I quote what he said here. I was being threatened then, and that was in 2013. If I was a coward, we would not have formed this government. We were told that choices have consequences, that we were unsuitable because we had cases at The Hague. It is the same thing we are being told now. We are being warned that there is a system, a deep state, people who will steal our votes. We are waiting for that deep state. Gang, gang. So, if there was any doubt as to whether Deputy President William Ruto is going to run for the presidential seat in 2022, I believe now these latest sentiments have quashed those doubts. And he has said that whomever may be standing in his way is not but a threat.
Yeah.
And he's going to go through with this. He has faced a combined onslaught by a faction of the ruling Jubilee Party allied to the president and the opposition led by Raila Odinga. Said together with Uhuru, they had triumphed over similar challenges in the run-up to 2013 and they had been when they had been indicted by the International Criminal Court. He said and recalled that choices have consequences, warning in 2013, referring to the caution by the then U.S. official Johnny Carson which was picked up by their opponents and used to campaign against their bid. He went on to say that political setbacks he faces now are nothing compared to what Uhuru and himself overcame when they teamed up in 2013. He was speaking at his Karen residence yesterday, where he hosted leaders from Kajiado County, led by Kajiado South MP Kato Ole Metito and nominated Senator Mary Senator. He asked Kenyans to stay firm against political intimidation and threats from the so-called deep state and the system.
Okay.
Without naming them, however, the DP was alluding to powerful members of the public service and business people who are power brokers and exercise political influence from the shadows.
Yoyote ni sawa. So what is he saying?
That there's somebody who's trying to stop reggae and he's unstoppable.
We shall revisit this, I think, in the 9 o'clock hour, right? And look at trying to understand the meaning of deep state. Well, the deep state, first, to be very fair, is not a creation of William Ruto's.
No, it isn't.
William Ruto is basically just jumping onto this bandwagon. It has started from somewhere else. It started from the civil society that's talked about deep state and state capture. It has been used by even opposition politicians. Dr. Oburu Odinga himself has referred to the deep state. And I think this is just a strategy by Ruto to create a new enemy. If you want to rally an army, you've got to have an enemy. Otherwise, your army doesn't know who it's fighting.
Or if you're trying to incur any kind of sympathy or incur any kind of support, you've got to sometimes make yourself look like the victim.
You're just a victim, and I mean, it's everybody else against me, and you can see it's very clear that everybody is against me.
Nobody likes me. Everybody hates me. I'm going to go eat some worms.
Yep.
Okay.
You know what is also of interest is that when you sort of like spark off such a conversation,
Yeah.
there's one very straightforward understanding that this is a double-edged sword. It may very well work for you. On the other hand, it may very well not
fire.
work. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, you could use it to attack, or you could, in some cases, lean on this sword.
You could. Yes.
It appears to me like politicians always get into something knowing full well the risk. But one of the things of being a successful politician is being a risk taker.
Or risk averse.
Yeah.
Sometimes that is true, Eric, but sometimes I think they just bungle along.
Yeah. Just move.
Just this is.
Pick up what you can. And
Yes,
do
a
it.
knee-jerk reaction. What's happening? Let's react to it
Go
and let's
with it.
continue.
Yeah. And
Yes.
that's what I'm saying. Actually, they just, for them, they don't consider those risks. They're just like, what?
We are here now.
It works now. Let's go. If it doesn't work, we'll just jump onto the next one and move on. So right now, what works best is deep state. If now start questioning and saying, okay, so if you're saying deep state and you've been in power for 7 years, so what are we talking about?
Are you saying the deep state has previously been supporting you?
And you're saying the deep state was against you in one election, and then you won, and then you won that election, and you won a subsequent
even the
election. What are you
introduction
saying?
of that particular topic at that level, that to me is what is interesting, because essentially you're saying it exists.
Yep.
So now you've told us that there's such a thing.
You're telling us you have no
Those who do not know.
power, basically. You are powerless.
And yes.
Oh, you're saying that Kenya as a whole has been captured.
Despite coming to us and asking us to give you power and authority, to vote for you so that you can go and use the constitutional power given to you, you're telling us that our constitution has been usurped by some mysterious giant from
The Loch Ness Monster.
Yeah. Hey, okay, that would be an interesting one at 9.
It will.
Raila purges top party organ in 2022 poll plan. Lawmaker Junaid Mohammed and Judy Pareno are among the big names that have been replaced as ODM picks Catherine Muma to chair the National Elections Board in a fresh bid to rejuvenate ahead of the next general election. So this was basically implementation of a report that was presented to the party a long time ago. This report was chaired by Catherine Muma. The task force that had been created by the party was chaired by Catherine Muma. It came up with a report and said, you know what, we have people in certain offices that have basically just spoiled the unity of this party. They ensure that there is a lot of back and forth and a lot of infighting, especially during party nominations, so that they can benefit from this, and they put people that are in favor with them. So for us to be able to have proper nominations in 2022, for us to be able to have internal party elections that work well in 2022, for us to be able to have a forged and strong and united party in 2022, we need to reshuffle. We need to do a big sweep. This time, the party leader has said, okay, that's what you want. So you, Catherine Muma, the chair of that report, so you're the one now who's been the director of elections. You do the job.
You know what is of interest? Given that this is a political party, and given that we're having a discussion about political parties and their wheretofores, everything that is being alluded to in the paper may not necessarily be true, beginning with the headlines. Purge. When people are replaced, they were appointed and they've now been replaced. Is that not a normal, refreshing process that organizations have?
Yeah.
Somebody comes in. That's why you even have limited terms in terms of the length of time you can stay in a position.
That's very true.
But of significance.
And that's why there's the word purge. The word purge exists.
No, the word purge exists when you are talking about something nefarious. It's not, someone didn't leave of their own volition.
You purge something that you want to stay.
No, it is a forcible removal. Yes.
That's what this is.
And I'm saying, how do we know? Because the truth of the matter is, was it a forcible inclusion when they were brought in? So that is now forcible removal. But even, but even of significance, when you are given a political position, usually
Given.
yes, given. They were given. Was there an election? Were these people elected? They were given. When you're given a political position, it's to serve a certain purpose. Now, if that purpose is no longer required, then your purpose also becomes extinct.
Yeah. So you're purged.
You also are no longer required.
Eric likes this word, doesn't he?
I think it's rolling nicely off his tongue.
Yeah.
He likes it.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what I say, we're just going to
Purge.
continue purging it.
Look, we saw same thing happening in Jubilee the other day, especially in parliamentary party positions. It was a purge. But look, the people were being removed for a reason. It's not that Junaid Mohammed was being removed from this chair and Judith Pareno and all without a reason. There's a reason. And one of those reasons is the report actually indicts them and says the
Actually,
leadership of these positions.
Eric, I'm taking it further. The decision to remove them had already been made.
It was just
How do you
communicated.
sanitize it? How do you make it look like?
How do you launder it to make
Yes,
it look like
it
it's
should
all
look
right?
like this is a process that, and your process following, a process following organization. You have
Bring up a report.
No, you start with that group of people we like talking
task
about.
force.
Basa, thank you very much.
Study the task force to go and investigate what's happening and give us a
Then they
report.
give us a report.
And then we shall implement this
Yes.
report.
So you're a report implementing setup.
Bas.
So no purge.
Okay.
Say it one more time, just for good measure.
No, Eric's going to say purge.
28 minutes to 7 o'clock. Let's take a look at what's happening on the roads. I'm not going to use the word purge.
Oh, really?
Really?
Keep it right here. More headlines to come shortly.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise.
You're listening to Spice FM. Traffic.
Okay, so again yesterday, now unfortunately in the opposite direction, there was some drama on Mombasa Road. It is the hope of everyone far and beyond that Mombasa Road will not give up any terrible vibes today, but we're going to have to wait and see. At the moment, it's looking pretty good. We have a bit of a hold up right after Cabanas, and that's leading to General Motors, but that's normal. And we'll be on the lookout to see if anything crazy does happen right around there. Kangundo Road traffic is looking very good today, all the way to Outer Ring, in and outbound, so that looks pretty all right from where we are seeing it. Okay, let's look at Thika Road. We're coming out from Muthaiga Corner, Kiambu Road, looking all right. It's possible that Kiambu Road will turn into 6 lanes, but we're gonna have to wait and see. For now, if you're out and about, you should be out. You should be all right. We'll take a look at what it all looks like in a short while. Spice FMKE on Twitter. That's how you can reach us. Let us know what you see in case you get stuck, or if you have an alternate route, and we can share that information with everybody else.
Spice FM. Malindi. Pure golden sound and good talk. 94.4 Spice FM. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
24 minutes to 7 o'clock. Thank you very much for tuning in. Now, there's a story here. Let me just read the first 3 paragraphs, if you allow me.
Please.
Politicians were on their knees, heads bowed in prayer on a chilly Sunday afternoon at the home of convicted Sirisia MP John Waluke. Their mission was simple. They wanted the heavens to grant them just one miracle. One billion shillings.
Okay.
They had arrived in style, riding in luxurious cars, parked strategically at Waluke's spacious rural home. Former Kakamega Senator Boni Halwale led the delegation of the self-proclaimed preachers of the gospel of political transformation, mainly Jubilee politicians from the Western region, allied to the DP William Ruto. Others were Benjamin Washiali, Fred Kapondi, Mwambu Mabonga, Dan Wanyama, Charles Gemose, and Malulu Njendi. All these guys were coming here because this gentleman called Mr. John Waluke has been declared by a court to be a fraudster. And he has been fined some hefty amounts of money that get to close to 1 billion shillings. And he's been told, failure to this, my friend, where we're inside. So, the friends came to do a harambe. And the harambe was not in cash, but was in spiritual support and in seeking divine intervention. That God of Abraham,
Isaac
of
and
Moses,
Yakubu.
of everybody else, including John, please give Brother John 1 billion shillings. If you don't do this, God,
How did that one go?
Brother John is going in.
Or remain in.
Yeah. Kitaumana.
As we speak, should we say, the answer to those prayers, were they demanded to, was there a request for the prayers to be answered wholesale or in installments? And if in installments, have we received any installments so far?
From heaven.
From heaven.
Wherever it is that they're coming from.
We expect now John to give some testimony in coming days, but as far as those who attended that thing in terms of neighbors were concerned, they didn't see it.
Nothing manna from heaven.
No. The Bumula MP Mwambu Mabonga, who is a staunch Christian, read a verse from the Bible and then went ahead to preach. And then other MPs would come in and speak, and then they'd take a health break, and they left. But the prayers left constituents who thronged the compound to catch a glimpse of the proceedings disappointed. They had expected the leaders to raise some funds to bail out Waluke, who needs 1 billion shillings to secure his freedom. The MP has, however, appealed his conviction. Awajapata.
Okay.
It's unfortunate.
Patrick Wahisi, who is a close associate of Waluke's family, says the individuals have been giving out contributions to facilitate an appeal lodged by Waluke's team of lawyers. So the money that is being contributed now is going to pay lawyers. Because they are hoping that is that one way. Win the appeal so you don't have to pay 1 billion shillings. And that'll be cheaper.
It's easy. It's better to pay the lawyer.
But the one for 1 billion, that is God's budget.
But this one
That's
raising
God's
money
bill.
for is to pay the lawyers. Okay.
A
See,
case-
God doesn't help those who don't help
So
themselves.
now they're helping.
a case that has taken this long, and with the history and of our High Court, it isn't very often that even in a court of appeal will overturn an earlier ruling. It has happened, but it doesn't happen very often. And even if you take it to the Supreme Court, again, the same thing. It's very rare that the Supreme Court will overturn a ruling that was made by the Court of Appeal. Very rare. It happens, but it doesn't happen very often.
Oh,
So
yeah.
perhaps this is where now the prayers come in. And this is where the expectation of a miracle comes in.
Yeah.
Because everything about this case requires, should we call it divine intervention?
This
Oh,
one is a
yes.
miracle that is needed. I believe in miracles.
This one is Papa God himself.
This one, as they've put it,
Because you see, John Waluke does not come from a rich family, yeah? So it's only his friends who would be able to help him. So far, those friends have contributed something to the tune of 200 million shillings. That is not a mean feat, by the way.
It isn't.
That
But
getting to 200 million shillings
That's
from
a lot
your
of money.
friends.
it's a lot
That's
of
some
money.
good cash. 100 million came from one individual.
There are people who clearly are good friends and they want to ensure that the friendship is something that is supported by deeds, not just words.
Yep.
However, if you're talking of miracles, there are those who will say that this conviction in itself
It's a miracle.
yes, because we read of malpractices, ordinary citizens suffering, maize rotting because it can't be sold,
Yeah.
people bringing in maize, all manner of scandalous and scroundalous things being
this
done.
one.
Yes, and so when you have a case that has gone on for this long and a high court tells you these people have been found guilty
Yeah.
and give you reasons,
Yeah.
that in itself can be considered to be miraculous.
So we can actually consider the conviction to be the answer to somebody else's prayer.
The answer to, I would argue, the prayers of those who have been seeking justice and wanting to see justice brought on the heads of people who have been flaunting the laws of this country.
My God. So God is on the spot here.
Yes. He always is on the spot.
And he always
So
turns
are
up
you going to
just in
reverse the
time.
miracle that you gave to the others so that you can give a miracle to this other one?
Well, you know,
Because
that is
giving a miracle of 1 billion shillings to John Waluke is basically reversing the other miracle.
well, this is what we want to wait and see, because that now falls in the realm of God working in mysterious ways.
Yes.
And this one will be a wonder to perform.
Yes.
He is co-convict, though. Mrs. What's her name? Grace Wahungu has managed to raise quite some tidy sum.
Yeah, I think she did raise 800 million.
She has already raised it.
The required amount.
to
Yes.
bail her out.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think what's happening now is that the
What
EACC and other
Waluke
agencies
needs
are
is
confirming the
His
sources
his
of
friends.
that money.
He needs four
He
times.
needs four
the
times
kind
those
of
kind
friends
of
that
friends and family that
Five.
that Grace has. But now EACC is confirming the sources of these contributions.
So you
for
contribute,
Grace.
you actually also ESCC comes and
No,
So
like that.
one person comes and give you 28 million. They need to go and confirm where that money came
What
from.
you've done, and this is probably what's delaying this miracle that you're speaking of, Eric, because no one wants that sort of scrutiny.
Yeah. Because that's what EACC now is doing. This is what is delaying Grace Wahungu's completion right
Yes.
now. Because they must confirm each and every
Who
shilling.
did you get this money
Where
from?
did it
No,
come
where
from?
did this money come
Where
from?
did it
No,
come
who they've
from?
already figured.
They know
where.
who already.
But where did
Where
this
did it come from?
money come from?
And are those sources valid? Right. That's the problem now.
The sources may be valid, but the means by which that money arrived at you, yes. Does it
Okay.
require further scrutiny?
Let's wait and see how it all plays out.
It's not going to be an easy one.
It isn't.
Let's wait and see.
Can I give you another story?
Yes.
Okay, so CS Munya has called for private-public alliances, and this is towards food security. Cabinet Secretary has appealed for private sector support for smallholder farmers in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic. The CS yesterday urged private businesses to help boost local production of farm inputs and provision of extension and training to farmers, which is something that the ministry and its agencies should be involved in anyway, regardless of COVID. He flagged off 13,000 metric tons of fertilizer donated by the Norwegian fertilizer firm Yara East Africa to cushion 80,000 smallholder farmers in 22 counties against the effects of the pandemic. He said food production had declined over the years, surprise, surprise. Thus, interventions to boost food sufficiency and self-reliance must be adopted. They must be adopted anyway. And I just think that, unfortunately, COVID now gives people across the board an opportunity to say these are things that we should do. In my opinion, these are things that should be done whether there was COVID or not. That's the way to reach food security, for example. These things that we're talking about now, PPPs, need to happen anyway. They should be the way in which you do things on a normal basis, and we shouldn't run to adopt them because there's a pandemic. But anyway,
There are many PPPs actually in food production value chain. It's looking at the efficiency of the PPPs and how well they are structured.
Actually, the Competition Authority of Kenya,
Uh-huh.
yes, with reference to something we discussed the other day,
Yes.
actually is one such organization that seeks to actually ensure. Remember the discussion we're having about what they're suggesting. And they're saying, look, folks, you're the ones who are involved in this particular business or businesses. Can you come up with ways of ensuring that these things are tightened?
Yeah.
Because we have situations where mega supermarkets seem to be having problems. And the major problem is they are not paying their suppliers. So can we come up with things that guarantee that the supply is protected?
Yeah. That it works well.
Yes. And that
Basically
everybody benefits, yes.
Self-regulating mechanisms. Good way to go. Sonko hangs on, no, not the Sonko. The state hangs on to Sonko's 500 million shillings. You've said 500 million, but $500 million sounds.
Half a
sounds
billion.
It
Sounds,
has
you know.
more gusto
Yeah.
to it, doesn't it?
So looking at Waluke trying to raise $1 billion. So, that the governor is facing some issues in court. And the governor had petitioned the anti-corruption court as he sought access to the 500 million shillings because he says he is so broke he can't even buy groceries for his family. He loves a public display of opulence and is up against the Asset Recovery Agency, which had obtained orders to freeze their accounts following suspicion that some cash transactions were proceeds of crime. The said cash transactions, remember we had even talked about this a bit earlier, is from 2017 to 2019, how money was coming into Sonko's accounts through various deposits on the same day. For example, on August 17th, 2017, Sonko received 30 million shillings in various banks split into 24 transactions. A couple of days later, 6 days later, he received 10,300 USD in Diamond Trust Bank split into 2 deposits. Sonko receives 45 million in 44 tranches in a single day. September 11th, he receives 6.2 million in 3 cash deposits. So they were like, hey. All these amounting to 500 million shillings is what the Asset Recovery Agency has secured the authority of the court to freeze the account. Now he has gone to appeal this, but the case was first placed before Justice Mombi Ngoge, who recused herself. It was then heard by Justice Kimaru, who froze the accounts. And now Justice Lecit says, I find that the applicant has not met the threshold under Section 89 of the Proceeds of Crime and Anti-Money Laundering Act to have the impunged preservation orders varied or rescinded or for any other order provided thereunder. So there is nothing that you've come and told me that convinces me that you need that money yet, that can get access to this money.
He needs groceries, man.
That may be so, but
Kind of like the 2 million for milk.
why is it the problem of the court?
Because they froze his assets.
But that's what they're trying to tell you, that it's not really our problem. We have an issue with this money.
The man has a salary.
Yes.
All right.
It hasn't been frozen.
It
Salary.
hasn't been frozen.
That's what I'm telling you. You think groceries, tomato, and milk. CT told us the other day that somebody had just left some 2 million there for, milk in the morning.
Vegetables.
For vegetables.
So you're thinking 2,000 shillings here, you'll stock your fridge for a couple of days. No, it's different. But in this case, the court has told him, my friend, go get your own geisha.
Definition of grocery is different.
Oh, yes.
Also, size of family has not been specified.
Yeah.
The details that we are discussing make for interesting conversation. But the truth of the matter is this, those are not things that concern the court.
Get your own geisha.
They impounded that money because they were not clear as to how it is you acquired it.
Source
And there
and
was,
means.
and they had evidence that they needed to look into as to how that money got there and where that money came from before it got to you.
Yeah.
Okay? So there's a whole story behind it that the court has to look into before they can say it is okay. We believe this money is actually yours and it arrived in your account in the manner it should, and it is in a manner which our laws allows you to have.
So
Before that is
not?
cleared,
You will
Use
not
your
get
salary.
access to this money. And also, you can't come and tell us that it's because you can't buy grocery. Yeah, come on. If, for example, the PS for devolution, who also is facing some NYS cases, remember the court has allowed that account to pay school fees for their daughter, for the children. So that's something. That we shall get an invoice from the school and the bank shall pay directly to the school from this account. That's all.
Yes.
Sugar, vitungu, hoho, nini. You sort yourself out.
when you're a public servant, yes. Oh,
That's the kind of short break.
as opposed to ha.
Ha ha hoo ha. 10 minutes to 7 o'clock. We'll be right back.
You are tuned in to Nairobi's #1 soul station, Spice FM. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Sugar and spice and everything nice, everything nice. Spice FM.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
Okay, 9 minutes to 7. Let's continue. Big headlines.
So, TSC ordered to return 130,000 union members. Parliament yesterday directed the Teacher Service Commission to reinstate 130,000 teachers removed from the Teachers Union register by the end of this month. Remember, there was this tussle between then about promotions, and the KNUT and the TSC were at loggerheads in terms of who then got promoted and otherwise. Appearing before Parliament's Education Committee yesterday, the Kenya National Union of Teachers told MPs how the teachers' employer hatched an elaborate plan to strip it of its members, crippling its operations and putting the union on its deathbed. The union's Deputy Secretary General, Hesbon Otieno, told MPs that more than 700 staff across 110 branches, that with more than 700 staff across 10 branches, the diminished members had made it difficult to sustain its operations. He said that TSC designed, printed, and directly delivered forms to schools and compelled teachers to exit the union. Now, TSC manually removed our members from the union without authority. This is happening now in the payroll of August, according to Mr. Otieno. If implemented, the order to reinstate members is expected to give KNUT its past numerical and financial muscle. At the moment, KNUT has 50,000 members, raking in 49 million shillings, down from 130 million when its membership was 180,000 in June last year. However, the TSC said yesterday's meeting did not issue any orders, but only proposed ways to end a standoff between the union and between the commission and KNUT. So,
Okay. Win some, lose some.
win some again.
Win some again. Back to
And
the
all
trenches.
this tussle, what is it about?
The back and forth.
Yes, apart from just the power games that TSC and not want to play.
That's it.
That's really what it is. That's really what it is. It's power play here. The union and the commission to see then, who's
Has more
muscle.
muscle.
Right.
As an employee, if
Financially
you
or
don't
otherwise.
rein in such an organization, it will roll you over. It will roll all over you, man.
Actually,
gotta
both
push
phrases
back.
are correct, Eric. It'll roll you over, for sure. It'll do things to you. It will. Because, you're always being held ransom.
Yeah.
You're always.
Always. True. And when we see things like
And it's
promotions.
so emboldened. Every
Yeah.
single morning, they just wake up and say, you know what?
This is what we're going to do.
We want more money.
A couple of weeks ago, the TSC decided that they were going to promote a number of teachers, but they only promoted those that were under the commission. So those who then were under the union and had been removed from the commission, no promotion for you. Sorry.
Anyway, let the fight continue.
Yeah, your money.
I'm sure it'll settle down at some point or the other. But while it's settling,
Yeah.
the teachers continue to suffer.
Yeah.
Yes. Nobody's in school.
City?
There's something that is interesting here. This is page 10 of the Business Daily. Massive fines expose power firms' breach of land rights. Very simple. Whenever Kenya Power and Lighting, for the longest time, I thought it was lightning. Yes, but nonetheless, I now know it is lighting. Okay.
Yeah, there are those that still think it's lightening.
Ning, yes, il spark. I'm by the talker.
Power from heaven.
Yes.
Anyway.
Anytime they want to expand their services, they have to erect poles, and this has to be on land. And sometimes what they do is actually not only unprocedural, but it is illegal. Meaning, the law requires, and let me read it, 15 days, the law demands that a landowner should be granted notice through appropriate mass channels, including advertisement, in at least 2 national newspapers or radio, before they come and plonk those posts in your property. It appears this is something that they have not been doing. And as a result of this, people have woken up to this reality and they've taken them to court. Of note, 40 million shillings has been awarded to one George Joseph Kang'ethe and Ella Karwitha for trespassing into their land in Ngong, Kajiado County. And many people who have had similar experiences are now going to court to cash in. Now,
I think the issue here is the people trying to cash in.
The issue here is Kenya Power thinking they can get away with stuff as they've been getting away with stuff. They've been told you can't get away with stuff.
This land issue in this country, I think we need to get to a point where we change the law on ownership of land. Come on. Power wants...
No,
Power is coming
Eric.
to your neighbor's home.
Eric.
So we erect a pole here. We got to pay...
Eric, no. It's on your land, 15 days only. It's not as though you want to have the electricity channeled to your home that day, and everything's not done in a day.
It's
Man,
okay.
There's a survey.
It's all right.
There's an entire process.
All those things. It's not like at Kenya Power guys just wake up and come, and you wake up in the morning, you find Kenya Power people are there.
No,
you
they
also
don't.
know that they are...
They know you're
But
they're
Eric,
working in this area.
Yes, Eric, but they are the ones who don't follow the procedure which is laid down in the law. Yes, they know. They ought to know this more than anybody else. They're the ones who do this work.
Yeah, they should know.
Yes,
They should know.
they should know.
Yeah, but also, you may also find that there are some farmers who will claim that I did not know that this was happening.
Well, that is
remember, the law requires publication in a national newspaper.
You don't need to know.
This is Kenya Power coming to your shamba somewhere uko in Ilasit Loitoktok. When's the last time you saw a newspaper?
Allow me to explain this. This is just among the things it's supposed to do.
Oh, they're also supposed to come and put a poster.
Apart from just telling you, okay, mass channels can be the chief.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
It's village communication. Yes. This is what we're planning to do. The chief has a baraza and says this is what we're going to have. You've been informed.
Send his folks to tell people around what's going to happen.
Yes. You it isn't as though what is being demanded
So the
is something.
burden of proof here is on those who are claiming that they are not informed to actually prove that they are not informed.
Yes.
And then
But it
Kenya
isn't
Power
one
will-
thing, Eric. It is that, and then this, and then this, and then this.
Yeah.
Now,
and one of them you'll find that Kenya Power has done.
Precisely, and the other three they haven't done. So they are culpable. What I'm trying to say is this, my friends. I don't sympathize with Kenya Power. Okay?
It's clear.
Yes.
Ever.
It's a monolith of an organization. It has an entire department full of legal brains who understand these things. It has an entire department of communication that understands these things. Surely, are you telling me that it is so difficult to tell a simple Kenyan whose land you want to erect a pole on that this is what we want to do and use the channels that are available to you? No.
Umekata.
No, nimekata.
Yeah.
Okay.
And other people are going to continue cashing in until they sort this thing out. For me, it falls that great pattern of seeing our constitution at work and our legal processes actually working. Meaning, it was hitherto thought of that you couldn't win a case against such a huge organization. And neither would they pay. But not only are the awards being given, but they can appeal, of course. But it sounds good to the ear when a simple Mwananchi can go to court and the court can find that the Mwananchi is actually owed money. It is a good thing.
Watoe kikingi yao.
Yes.
Okay.
Si lazima utoe lipa pesa. It's
Watatoa
already there.
kikingi.
They will not remove it.
Okay. Coming to the top of the hour, what's today's proverb?
Today's proverb: people who drink to drown their sorrows should be told that sorrows know how to swim.
People who drink to drown their sorrows.
Yes,
should be told
if that's your goal, to drown your sorrows. You need to know the sorrow will not drown. It will swim.
It will swim. But it will get drunk.
That is the hope, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's the hope.
Hopefully that happens. Good morning. It's now 7 o'clock.
Sugar and spice and everything I Spice FM.
Spice up your life. Spice FM. Nakuru.
So, for the third
Traffic.
day running, Mombasa Road seems to be absolutely crazy, guys. All the way from the Weybridge, and there's a lot of overlapping going on, all the way to the SGR, and unfortunately then, it goes straight towards Cabanas and then out towards General Motors. It's craziness on Mombasa Road this morning. We're hoping that that will open up soon, and that it's just early morning traffic as folks try to get to work. But we'll take a look at that and see how that may make change in a short while. Inbound, however, it's looking pretty good. Gong Road is a dream, every driver's dream, as it were, and no problems there as you then approach the the City Mortuary roundabout and then head down towards Ngong Road. further down or towards Valley Road into the CBD, looking very good. Coming out of Westlands as well is looking great. Thika Road, just as you approach Kiambu, the Kiambu Junction and also the Muthaiga corner, you're fine. The traffic is moving. It's slow, but it's not bumper-to-bumper situations just yet. We'll let you know what it looks like. You also let us know what you see. We want to keep people moving this Wednesday morning. Spice FM KE. That's how you can reach us on Twitter.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Nduh Okoh, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latiff, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation
Very good
Room.
morning to you.
The
It's 2
only way
minutes
to
after
start your
7
day.
o'clock, and thank you very much for tuning in to The Situation Room this morning. This is Kenya's biggest conversation, broadcasting on Spice FM on 94.4 in Nairobi. We're in Mombasa, 87.9, Nakuru at 96.0, Kisumu 102.5, 96.7 in Eldoret, Nyeri 90.9, Malindi 97.7. We broadcast this show from Nairobi to the world on www.spicefm.co.ke. We also live stream the show every morning on Twitter, SpiceFMKE, Facebook, and YouTube, Spice FM KE, and Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday between 7 and 9 a.m. We are also live on KTN Home. A very good morning to our audience on KTN Home. Now, let's talk about government operations, all right, and how the state machinery is run, especially the government and coordination of government operations. We are soon going to be speaking to the Principal Secretary in charge of Interior and Citizen Services, and this is Dr. Engineer Karanja Kibisho. This State Department is a very crucial State Department in terms of coordination of government functions. It has that. One of the functions actually is that coordination of national government functions. It has a promotion of nationhood and national values. It has oversight and coordination of delivery of the flagship and priority programs, oversight over internal security, when it comes to registration of births, registration of persons, development of integrated identity management system, that's a Huduma number, the rollout of the unique personal identifier, oversight over coordination of the management of the national primary data registration, very many other things. This is according to Executive Order number 1 of 2020 that was released by the President the other day. So this is a crucial ministry, and Dr. Karanja Kibisho is the man who is the senior most civil servant in this particular State Department as a Principal Secretary. So just about Dr. Karanja Kibisho, okay? So when you hear Dr. Karanja Kibisho, he is a mechanical engineer. He's got a PhD in this. He has, served previously as a Principal Secretary in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Trade, also in the Ministry of Industrialization, and before that, he served in academia, rising to the level of chair of the Department of Mechanical Engineering at the Jomo Kenyatta University of Agriculture and Technology. And now he is right there in charge of Interior and Citizen Services. So this is very crucial. One of the things that we know right now is that the country is fighting COVID-19. And in the fight against COVID-19, it's being coordinated, of course, by the Ministry of Health. But the Ministry of Health will really relies a lot on other government departments, one of them being Interior, which is where you find the police when it comes to enforcement, for example, of curfew, when it comes to management of curfew and how things are running. This State Department is also helping. We spoke to the PS in charge of housing the other day, Hinga, and he told us, yes, we are the ones who are running this program, but you have to really rely a lot on officers on the ground, and these are the officers of the Interior. Good morning, Dr. Kibisho.
Morning to you, Eric.
Thank you very much for speaking to us, and welcome to the Situation Room.
Asante.
Dr. Kibisho, you are a very busy man, shall we say, just looking at your workload on a daily basis.
Let me say it's a misconception, perception. We are normal people, work normally, 8 to 5, just like you.
Dr. Kibisho, that doesn't sound like it's very true. 8 to 5 is the time, but what you pack in that 8 to 5 is really very different, wouldn't you say?
Depends on how you define work. Since we don't do the manual work,
Yeah,
sometimes working means even thinking while you're on bed.
true.
So if you define work that way, then we do a lot of time at work.
That's what we would imagine. When you talk about, for example, interior and coordination of security, security is a 24-hour service to the people. And
True.
and you know that your officers are on the ground. You know that at any given moment you may be called upon to issue some advice, to make some decision, to give a brief to your higher ups. I mean, this is what we mean when we say we know that you're definitely a busy man, even when you're asleep, like you said.
Yes, because we have to be alert all the time. When we define that work that way, then we are quite busy. We'll be awake at 5 to get the country situation reports, analyze them, and make decisions early, well before you wake up, to ensure that the day runs smoothly. And then we go and do the usual office work that people do.
Debunking the mysteries, Dr. Kibisho, and there's a general perception that when we hear the Ministry of Interior, we hear this ministry that seems to be Big Brother is watching Kenyans. Is that the truth, or is it from a point of servitude towards the people?
Ministry of Interior is first. Just before we go there, I want Eric to learn the name of the ministry.
Yep.
I could see you are struggling a lot. This ministry is called Ministry of Interior and Coordination of National Government.
Yes.
And it has 2 state departments. First department is State Department of Correctional Services. That's the one that deals with the prison services. Then we have the State Department of Interior and Citizen Services. Now, the reason why most people perceive it to be a big ministry is because of the services that we offer, because those services touch on every Kenyan. It is unlikely that you will wake up and not interact with the interior, even you, Eric. Because we are responsible for police.
Yep.
We are responsible for national government administrators, right from Nimbakumi to the regional commissioners. We are responsible for IDs. We are responsible for birth certificates. We are responsible for the citizen services that people really interact with in migration. And therefore, that's why people feel us, because we are the face probably of most of the services that citizens seek for every day.
Yep, that's quite a busy one, and yet indeed it's the one that touches us on a daily basis. Let's talk about now how you are touching us on a daily basis as we try to keep ourselves safe from COVID-19, as we try to take ourselves through treatment for COVID-19. One of the things that we know the government is doing is there are various programs that are meant to help the citizens go through this phase of COVID-19. There's, for example, the Kazi Mtaani program, which is being coordinated from the State Department for Housing, but that is using the structures of the interior to help it run. recently we saw a lot of complaints from various quarters, people saying this program has not reached our village, this program is not paying us the money that we thought to be paying. And then we saw a response from you and that was that we should avoid fake news and deliberate the deliberate broadcast of fake news, especially with regards to this. What did you mean by that?
Eric, since March, we've been struggling with a pandemic that there's no country in the world that knows how to deal with. And who tells you they have a silver bullet on this are lying. And every country is trying to see how best they can help their citizens wade through this season. And the government has had a number of interventions. The one that's visible is Kazi Mtaani, because there are people doing work, especially the young people, and people can see them. But there are very many other programs, so I'll get an opportunity to talk about them as well. But Kazi Mtaani is what was launched by His Excellency the President in April, I think, April-May, as a national hygiene program. And the entire objective of this program, first, before cleaning up our cities, is to ensure that the hundreds of young people who would otherwise work are engaged, because we know that the industry has slowed down. Most of the construction that was going on in this country has slowed down, and therefore you need to get some money into these people's pockets. And instead of telling them to queue for handouts, you get them involved in productive work. Initially, it was targeting unskilled labor, and that is why the Ministry of Interior is quite involved in identification of these young people, because, as you are aware, if you are to intervene for every young person who doesn't have a job, they're in their millions. And therefore, the government started a program that was rolled out first in Nairobi and scaled up. And because of budgetary restraints, capped at 300,000 people eventually in the fullness of time. I think now we are about 270 something.
Yeah.
What happens is these young people are made available, and then all other state departments, county governments are asked to bring work they would want them to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then they are paid on a daily wage, I think, of 400 and something. I haven't captured that figure there. And this money is transferred to their M-Pesa accounts. But like you would expect, when you have about 300,000 slots with several millions of people interested, there will be a lot of push and pull in who gets in. And that is how we are using our national government administrators to at least help the State Department of Housing in identification of the eligible young people. But it doesn't mean that the ones who are not in it are not eligible. You're only trying to look at who is more vulnerable. And it's the desire of the government to continue expanding this. It has been allocated 10 billion. You must admit that 10 billion can't solve unemployment.
No, it can't.
It's only 10 billion, but it is a good attempt. And we have seen, as the program rolled to phase 2 in July, scale up from unskilled labor now to semi-skilled labor. And you are seeing these young people now get involved in some almost technical areas. But I continue to restate that the work must come from the State Department and county governments. The State Department of Housing doesn't have the work. The work must, so it's Interior which will say, we want you to come and paint our buildings.
Yeah.
then we are provided with the labor.
Yeah.
Now, we have this new, and we are going to see that in Nairobi shortly, this new program of repainting the entire of the buildings, government buildings in Nairobi. You're going to see them do that work. And you obviously know that painting is not unskilled labor. And as a result, we'll have these young people trained to do some. I'm sure when P.S. Hinga came here, he must have explained in detail, so that at the end of this program, we not only have put money in their pocket, but we have also left them with some skills.
True.
That's what we try to do.
So, P.S., when we see this program as it's being rolled out, and then there are complaints and murmurings coming from the ground, especially now people saying the Nyumba Kumi leaders are not being clear about this, the local chief and the local administrators are playing games in terms of who gets onto the list and who doesn't get onto the list, how people are getting paid. And we get now the explanation that comes from yourselves and P.S. Hinga. Do you get a feeling like there is politicization of such a program, or even an attempt at sabotaging such a program by the government?
I will be as brutal as one can be with facts. One, when you are having 300,000 slots, and you have 1 million people who want those slots, obviously there is competition. The government has come up with a criteria that has been cascaded to the assistant chiefs, the Nyumba Kumi, right to the village. But there is competition. And therefore, you will expect that if you have 5 people who want one slot, there will always be someone who will feel shortchanged. We have a criteria.
Dr. Kibisho, does the government have plans to enhance this number from 300,000?
We just work with numbers, Eric. The money available is 10 billion. We estimate that we might be this COVID problem before the economy opens up, probably up to early next year. Now, when the economy has closed, because we must also be reasonable people, when the economy has closed, it means there isn't money being generated for government. People are not productive in a manner that, and I'm sure you know this even from the media industry, that people are not producing as much as they were before COVID. And therefore, the kit for the government is limited. There are some things that I have tried to explain whenever I have an opportunity about money in government. Government doesn't have a savings account. Government money comes from tax collection that's done by KRA, and it is spent the same day it comes.
Right.
And therefore, at the end of the year, on 30th June, midnight, all the money is finished. And we start afresh the following year. And therefore, the money available is 10 billion, unless the economy changes. So how many people can you employ with 10 billion for the months up to December? That's the math we must do. If the money situation improves, certainly the government will expand this program. But we must start by, Eric, do you want to pay more taxes so that this program expands? Because you are only a few people in the production sector, because the country has slowed down out of the pandemic. And therefore, to even pay salaries, you are finding even in your own institution is a challenge. It is the same way, cut and paste, how it's happening at Spice, cut and paste government.
Dr. Kibisho, can we see a situation where, just all of these measures are emergency measures because of what is being faced now? And I go back to a place where the country is free of COVID, for example. Are these not programs that can then take up a permanent position in the country, whereby youth are people who are jobless across the board are continuously engaged and then being able to have some kind of gainful employment, as opposed to just one measure taken when there's a pandemic? Is it not something then can be a permanent situation?
Exactly. Like they say, probably you use a misfortune to take lessons. And we are using this because nobody knew that a country can survive the way we are surviving before COVID. I agree with you entirely, and we have seen this program when I talked of moving from unskilled labor to semi-skilled labor. We've seen now this program moving to construction of roads. You can see there are some counties that want to do their roads using cobblestones. And when we succeed in doing that, then there is no reason why we should stop even post-COVID. And I think it is a golden opportunity that we have to change and look at the way we provide labor in this country differently. So I agree with you entirely that post-COVID, we must not stop these programs in terms of provision of labor because we have identified very many areas where these young people can be useful. Secondly, at the end of this, they will have so much skill that stopping the program would actually be putting all those skills to waste. So it has been a wake-up call for everyone in this country that there can be another way of doing these things and engaging the young people. So I agree with you, and this is the line along which the government is also thinking that we shouldn't stop this. We shouldn't stop doing the road construction using the young people simply because COVID has gone.
What would make this difficult, Dr. Kibisho? What makes it difficult to do this work in the country? From this department, from your point of view, what are the setbacks?
I don't think there is any reason or any difficulties other than availability of resources that would make us stop this program. We are talking to the state departments whose programs are labor intensive to ensure that they are aligned even post-COVID. So this COVID has provided us with an opportunity to see, come on, there is another way of doing these things. There is another way of engaging young people than just expecting them to be employed in white-collar jobs. And I think it is certainly a program that is not going to die away because of post-COVID situations. And I think there is no difficulty that we are overseeing other than change of policy. And that is the work of government. And these policies are being discussed and they will be aligned to the functions of every state department.
It is indeed encouraging to hear that the government is picking up lessons from what is happening now with the fight against COVID-19, and everything that the government is now doing is basically going to be geared towards improving the services. We are speaking with the Principal Secretary in charge of Interior and Citizen Services, Dr. Engineer Karanja Kibisho. He's on the line with us this morning. We are looking at COVID-19, the fight against COVID-19, the government's coordination in this fight, in addressing citizens' needs and services, and also the lessons that are going to be taken out of this and the lessons that are being learned out of this. We want to take a short break on Spice FM and KTN Home. We'll be back shortly. We'll be taking a look at weather and traffic, and then the conversation with Dr. Kibisho continues. Keep it right here.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah.
You're listening to Spice FM. The weather with Spice
All right, still
FM.
overcast in Nairobi. We're looking at mostly cloudy conditions for the capital. Today at 15 degrees currently. There's a chance of rain later with highs of 23 and lows of 14. Njeri is mostly cloudy at 14 degrees, highs of 21 and lows of 14. A chance of thunderstorms also forecasted for the afternoon. Nakuru is going to experience wet conditions as well with highs of 22 and lows of 13. Eldoret is mostly cloudy this morning, highs of 20 and lows of 12, also forecasted for thunderstorms later on in the day. Kisumu was clear this morning at 19 degrees. It'll change later though. Cloudy conditions will change to rainy conditions, highs of 27 and lows of 19, where Kakamega is partly cloudy at 16 degrees, highs of 24 and lows of 15 with rainy conditions later. Malindi is partly cloudy at 24, highs of 28 and lows of 23. Chances of rain as Mombasa was experiencing showers this morning. That has stopped currently, 23 degrees. We'll see them come back with highs of 28 and lows of 22. Kampala is partly cloudy at 19 degrees, highs of 27 and lows of 19. We'll experience rain showers also later on. Dar es Salaam is partly cloudy at 22 degrees. We'll see highs of 30 and lows of 21. Johannesburg is experiencing a little bit warmer conditions this morning at 9, highs of 22 and lows of 6, and sunny conditions through the day. We'll wrap things up in Lagos for now. 23 degrees and clear skies this morning in the capital in the commercial capital, highs of 29 and lows of 22.
Traffic.
It continues to be crazy on Mombasa Road this morning. There's a truck that has stalled on the truck section of the road, and this has affected traffic all across. And this means that it's built up and bumper to bumper all the way from the Weybridge now to the SGR and even further down to Cabanas. After that, though, it's easy streets. And then you get to Bellevue, where it's chock-a-blocked, unfortunately, moving bumper to bumper. It's building and building and building, even more on Thika Road this morning, all the way from Garden City and then moving towards the Pangani underpass. It's a slow stretch, but it is moving all the same. Getting into the CBD is not too terrible right now. We know that we're right in the middle of traffic hour. We'll see how that happens soon enough. Outer Ring, Babadogo, Dandora, those areas, traffic is building up, but it won't be too terrible. Industrial area does see a bit of a hold up as well with the bumper situation, but we should be out of it without too much pain. Let us know what you see, Spice FM KE. That's how you can reach us on Twitter, and we can share that word with everybody else.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right.
This is the situation.
94.4 Spice FM,
Only
Nairobi.
For our morning talk show on Kenyan radio, also broadcasting on KTN Home this morning. Remember, in this show, we have CT Muga, Nduh Okoh, and Latiff. On the line with us is Dr. Charles Muga. He is the Principal Secretary in the State Department of Interior and Citizen Services. Just before we went to the break, we were talking about Kazi Mtaani and the program that's been rolled out by the government for Kazi Mtaani. 10 billion shillings earmarked to reach out to reach 300,000 youth or people who vulnerable around the country who will be able to work for government and who will be able then to get paid. But Dr. Kibicho, as we went to the break, he was saying, look, this is just 300,000 people, and yet the demand is much higher. There are very many people who will not be able to be reached by this one. It's because we are basically cutting our coat according to the size of our cloth. Or is it the other way around? What do we do with the other 700,000, just assuming that, using just a round figure of a million, what do we do with the other 700,000 who are not going to be able to access this stimulus package from the government?
Thank you very much. And I'm very happy that you acknowledge there's some effort. And I think we haven't spoken about other programs that government is involved in terms of intervening during this difficult period. These programs are intervention programs, and we have another one that probably nobody talks about because you don't see people along the road, see people and blocking drainage. There's a program where the government is giving a further 300,000 vulnerable groups, which were identified. Groups, for example, in the slum areas where we have families who are led by a minor because the parents have passed on. Families where the breadwinners are incapable because of sickness. And we have a criteria that we used. And this group of people, 300,000, again, spread across all the counties, receive 1,000 shillings every week on Tuesday. And I think these are programs that we still haven't talked about. 300,000 every week. The interpretation of that is that every Tuesday morning, the government is disbursing 300 million to this group of people. And this set is different from the other 300,000. We also have another group, the cash transfer, the ones that receive, I think, 4,000 per month. That is dispersed by the State Department of Social Services. And I think collectively you might find that the number you're talking about is not 300,000, could be well over 1 million. But we also acknowledge that the people who are vulnerable are well above 1 million. And I agree we must live within our means. But there is good effort, and we keep recalibrating these groups so that when they are really need ones that we may have missed out, we see how we can be able to come in. While we are doing this, because it's important, we have seen that people are saying, we're not getting money in good time and all this. These are system challenges, not government challenges. I will tell you this. For example, the one I talked of, Tuesday, 1,000 to 300,000 people, this money is already with Safaricom. It's in the accounts of Safaricom. We sent at the beginning of this year almost 6 billion Kenya shillings to ensure that it's available when it's needed. But like you would expect, when you are doing M-Pesa to 300,000 people, there will be challenges here and there. And we really want to thank Safaricom for this collaboration because it is free of charge. We send 300 million shillings, 300 million shillings go to the people. I would want, if you allow, also to assess the impact and why are we putting this money into the pockets of Kenyans through M-Pesa, other than the old traditional method of buying food, putting it in trucks and taking it to people in the villages. The logic and the impact on our economy is totally different. I hope you'll be spiced enough to want to hear that.
Actually, yes, and indeed, we even heard it from the president when he talked about, the logistics of it. Much of that money ends up not reaching the intended beneficiary because it's chewed up in the logistics and the value chain and the supply chain.
What used to happen before, we would have a situation, probably there is drought, there are floods, and we advertise and say we want to give food to the affected. Then we would get people apply, tender, and buy maize, buy beans, sometimes spaghetti. And we always got it wrong because who told you people want to eat maize? Who told you when they are exposed, their problem is spaghetti?
Yeah.
And what we decided is, why can't we use the same money, put money in this guy's pocket, the same amount, and let that person make a decision of what to eat that day? It has more dignity and it has more impact. What I'll tell you, because we run these programs, 20% to 30% of the money previously when you are doing food distribution goes to logistics. So if you have 1 million shillings, you are sure 300,000 is going to pay trucks, pay logistics and all that. But now what we are having with the collaboration from Safaricom, 300 million shillings get into the pockets of the people as 300 million shillings. And the impact is this, Eric. Before, when you are going to do tender, who would get the tender for supplying maize?
People who are connected.
Eric, P.T. Muga. No. People with means. Not necessarily people with connection. But what is happening today? When you get the 1,000 shillings, which cumulatively is the same money would have gone to tender, it goes to the lady in the kiosk who is selling skuma wiki, because that's what you have chosen to take that day. And therefore, the distribution of this money to the economy is so magical, you can't believe. We did a survey in Kibra when we distributed 1 million shillings, and everybody that night was very happy, because the guy who does a barber shop has got someone to shave, the guy who sells metura has someone to buy metura, because people are making choices about how they spend their money. And I think this is something that we as a country must see as a new lesson and embrace it.
Dr. Kibishu, something that has bothered us in this studio for the longest time is there are all these initiatives. There's even one called Generation Unlimited Platform and others that people don't know about. Why is it that the government doesn't go out on a blitz, and why doesn't it let people know about all these wonderful programs that they have?
Because because we try everything to, like these programs, we try everything to, first of all, I don't go to defensive myself. We should do better in terms of telling Kenyans about these programs. But we also know, the three of you, that the topic we are having is not as enticing to the ears of people compared to if we are talking about how Senate was voting yesterday, or who fought who where. You know, that's more interesting to the ears of our people. And therefore, most of these things that we continue saying, development programs, you know, how many people even know the kind of work we do at the framework that the president put the other day to unlock government development projects, which we have unlocked in their thousands. When they are locked, it means they are continuing, people are getting paid, and the money is circulating. But how many people want to hear that story? It's boring. But I agree that we should do better. We should be more interesting in the way we pass this message. But I can confirm that we have hundreds and hundreds of these programs that are running across the country.
But there's something there in terms of hopeful giving of what it does for Kenyans. If they would understand that there's a lot of this that's going on, I see it as something that would ignite something else in another person in terms of hope for their own country. If they know that some of these you're talking about hundreds of development projects being unlocked. If people know that this is going on, there's something that it does for them. In terms of giving hope, in terms of igniting hope. So it seems like it's something that you would want to shout from the mountaintops that is being done.
I agree with you. And you still go back to how a human eye sees. I don't know whether you have passed through Limuru Road of late to go to Gigiri, any of you?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes, we have.
I'm sure you can't remember, there is a very beautiful road that has been built there. But once you pass the road and there's some narrow strip and you hit a small pothole.
You remember the pothole.
You forget all the beautiful road you've driven into, and you say this government only has potholes.
Yes.
I think we must, first of all, as Kenyans, collectively become more patriotic than we are, and start seeing government for what it is. Government exists for nothing else other than providing services to its people. And we can see, for example, if you look at the digitization program that has gone into this country, and what it will do in terms of saving man hours and efficiency and making sure that there is transparency in the way things are conducted in government. Nobody quantifies this, but we will keep talking about them. Probably we should up the game in terms of communication, but I just want to pick just digitization program, for example. I'm sure looking at the three of you, you have your life started as a small company of supplying water or to anybody. You used to queue.
We are not going to confirm or deny that.
No. You don't have to. Remember, I am PS Interior. I have the capacity to know whether
Oh my goodness.
This would segue into some more questions.
I will not go there.
All right.
But I'm saying, if you ever tried, you know that you'd go to the registrar of companies, do a company search, wait for 3 weeks. Are you aware that you can do that now on your phone now and get a company registered? Do you know you can do your search for land here now and get your answer so that you can go for a bank loan? Do you know how you can do know your customer without leaving that seat you're sitting on because of the digitization programs that we are having? And now shortly we are going to have a Huduma number that people are being forgot about, that will make you even not ever enter an office because you can get services even as you walk on the streets. The other day, we just launched a program in Buruburu for police. And that has brought the OB to where you are seated. So if you are on the wrong side of law, or if you want to report something to police, that journey that you're making to a police station to go and write in the big OB book has been reduced to your cell phone. That you can actually report, and it goes to an occurrence book of police without you leaving your desk. And I think when you look overall in what is the impact of this in terms of savings for the government, savings for the people, and conveniences, it's immense. And we have to learn actually how to appreciate some of this. But I agree with you 100%. There's a concern that we have as government that we need to do better in terms of communication.
You see, what muddies these waters even further, Dr. Kibishu, is when politicians wade in and we hear statements like deep state. Then someone like myself who thinks they're fairly informed wonders, what on earth is this deep state? What does it do? Does it even exist? Because anything that could possibly go wrong seems to be channeled and blamed to this entity that isn't very clearly understood, called the deep state. Can you talk a little bit about this, please?
I had curiously seen that CT Muga had not spoken.
You're serving the punch.
And I knew when he comes around, he would come with something heavy. You know, there are very many things that we keep hearing and also wonder what they are. You see, when people don't understand something, they try to create explanations through mystery. Deep state is a term used by people loosely to mean probably bad things from government. Because when you are told deep state, the three of you, you don't think those are preachers and bishops. That is not what comes to your mind. And I think this definition is as outrageous as it can get. What is deep state? I'm yet to understand it. Probably because you have used the term. What do you think deep state is? So that I can deny or confirm.
Well, it often refers, as you correctly have surmised, powerful people within government whose role is to manipulate things to suit purposes other than that which is advertised. That is loosely what I have garnered. But I am...
The real wielders of power.
Yes, but I'm confused still, because that's why I asked the question.
I think there isn't any deep state that we know about. The government is structured in a manner that everybody can see. Nowadays, we have a lot of facilities to ensure that we can interrogate anything that we think about. But when I was a little younger and I could dare with philosophy, I was saying that, there is work for even Satan, the devil. Because if you don't go to work, you can't feed your family, things are not working. At least you have something to blame. Nasema hii ni kazi ya shetani. At least the Satan has some work. Because you can't explain things, then there must be some Satan who is making things not work. And I think when people even fail in obvious responsibilities, or when people cannot explain some things to the citizens who they are supposed to serve, then it's very easy to say that I am not able to do this because there's some deep state that is stopping me from doing it, or there's some deep state that is frustrating me. But really, what is deep state? Who is that person called deep state, whose work is to frustrate other leaders and service providers to frustrate Kenyans? I think it is outrageous, and I really will one day would want to write a book.
People are demanding accountability for everything government, Bona PS. And among the things, yesterday we were speaking to the NARC Kenya party leader, Martha Karua, and she was saying, you know what, these questions are asked. For example, in this fight against COVID-19, we demand accountability, some simple things. You have received X amount of money as a government, you have spent X amount of money and in these particular projects. Why is it so hard to get this simple clarity on issues?
When you want information from government, you get it. Because there is no expenditure in government that is done in a manner that is not known to people. Number two, some statements are as outrageous as they come. Now, the budget of this country, the budget is roughly 3 trillion when we are doing very well. Now, when you hear, even you're supposed to even interrogate before you even talk. When you hear that 300 billion has been given to COVID effort and it has been misappropriated, where is the 300 billion coming from? It's a tenth of our entire economy. Some of these things that we talk about is because when we create suspicion around government, then it becomes juicy.
But Dr. Kabicho, if I may ask you on that.
Let me finish. Let me finish. I would want people to be very specific that government has allocated 10 billion to buy the following things. And I am not here to defend any position. I'm only saying that we need to be a little deeper and a little factual. We have allocated 10 billion for a certain function. Then you will say, this function, according to me, the same way that they interrogate a road, that there's a road from here to the river that is 20 kilometers. You go to the books and find it has spent 20 billion. Then you divide 20 billion by 20 kilometers and say, we think that this road is overpriced because the price per kilometer
is $1 billion.
But the way we talk is as if there is some 1 billion spent on that road and your mathematics don't tally, then the 1 billion didn't build a road. We need to start being scientific in the manner we interrogate this. And when there is wrongdoing, we put this to the right institutions. Instead of mob justice, we put it into the right institutions. And we are not short of them in this country, or that will interrogate misappropriation of funds. But I think just casting aspersions on every effort that the government tries to see, we are even, remember, Eric, when we started these interventions, there are even people saying there is no COVID.
Yep.
It's a government it's a creation of a situation so that money is eaten. Where is this money eaten?
You see, Bona PS, this is coming from I think this is an indication, Bona PS, that you have
Yes.
a population that does not trust the government. At what point did the government lose the trust of its people?
I think I would want you to do a survey across the world of citizens and their governments. I think because government exist to provide services, there will always be a reason why a Kenyan is or a citizen of any country is not happy about a service. And therefore, when we do the happiness index, you will find because government is supposed to provide services, and when that service is not given, regardless of what other positive services you have given, people will complain. And I think our work is to keep checking that there is complaint around this area, keep adjusting so that you attempt to make your citizens as satisfied as possible. So we cannot deny the right of Kenyans to scrutinize government and to criticize where they think the services ought to be given in a different manner. And I think, as you say this, we appreciate, because that's what we are supposed to do, and keep recalibrating our methods. But we also call the same responsibility when you are, so that we are factual. I'll tell you this, the three of you. We have a forum called Mulika, where citizens report. And we get thousands of reports of people committing crime and all this. Some as inactionable as they can get. When a person tells you, tuko huku Kiambu, na kuko na waizi wanaiba. So where do you go to solve that problem? I think we need a responsibility ourselves to make sure that even as we put government on its feet, we are putting government on its feet in a manner that it can identify the problem and solve it. But we welcome criticism, and we welcome the scrutiny from the public, because that is what we are supposed to do for people, provide service. But I agree, sometimes when the bigger bulk of the people are unhappy, then we have to sit back and check why are these people unhappy, and continue making sure that we readjust.
We hope even with the digitization program, then it's going to be easier for people to engage with the government, for people to ask questions, and then be more specific, for people to get answers for specific questions or even raise specific concerns, and that the government then is able to even interpret what the people are saying. We thank you very much, Dr. Karanja Kibicho, for speaking to us this morning. We know that there's a lot that you'd like to tell Kenyans, but just take 1 minute to give a message to the people of the Republic.
This is our country. You know, we only have one government. We only have one country. And I think how comfortable and how well we live in this country depends on what we want to get from it. I call upon my fellow Kenyans that we start creating positive mentality so that together we can build this country. The institutions that we have, those are our institutions. And when they are working, we are all happy. When they are not working, we are all frustrated. So we try as much as possible as Kenyans to ensure that we support the functionality of these institutions. I will just end with one that is very popular with Kenyans, called the National Police Service. It will be unfair for me not to say this because we keep criticizing. We keep saying that these fellows are not as slim as we would want to see them, like the Singapore ones. But I want to remind ourselves, today we have slept comfortably, we have woken up, the three of you in the studio having come safely because of these people. They sacrifice their lives for us. And as Kenyans, it is our responsibility to ensure that because they are our sisters and brothers, we also support them so that their morale is also motivated, and we ensure that that they give us the best that they can. Lastly, I call upon all of us to be responsible, know that we have COVID, know that this is not fake news, like you had said earlier. I'm sure everyone in this country now knows a person who has been tested COVID positive, we start now perpetuating positive messaging, ensuring that the people who have regrettably turned positive are not stigmatized and looked at as if they have leprosy, to treat this disease as a normal disease now, that when you are positive, do what the doctors are saying and you will be well. The fatality is only at 1.7%. Thank you very much.
Asante sana, Dr. Engineer Karanja Kibicho, PS in the State Department of Interior and Citizen Services. An hour is not long enough, so we'll invite you again for a phase 2 of this conversation as well, and hoping that we are soon able, with the help of our government, to beat COVID-19 so that you can now come and join us in the studio and have this conversation with us right here.
I'm here for you, Eric.
Asante sana, and
Asante
have a
sana.
good day.
Thank you very much, sir.
Time for a break at 2 minutes to 8 o'clock. You are watching Spice FM you are watching the Situation Room on Spice FM and KTN Home. We'll be back shortly. All right, coming to the top of the hour, this is the Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. And as we come to the top of the hour, now we're going to change our discussion in the next hour, right? We'll be talking about dead capital. So, CT, you can remind us today's proverb.
People who drink, and the reference here isn't to tea or water, it is to alcohol, to drown their sorrows, should be told that sorrows know how to swim. You will not drown them.
Do sorrows get drunk? That's my only concern.
Well, why don't you
Try.
Yes, and see how your sorrows function.
I'd say the sorrows still get out of it alive.
They get as much of a hangover as you do, the person who's drunk. This is a Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. Remember, we broadcast in Nairobi, Mombasa, Kisumu, Nakuru, Eldoret, Nyeri, Malindi, as well as worldwide on Spice FM KE, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, and also this morning on KTN Home. Good morning. It's 8 o'clock.
Sugar and spice and everything I know. Spice FM.
Spice up your life. .5 Spice FM, Kisumu.
So Mombasa Road is still from the SGR and even further down towards General Motors is an absolute mess this morning, and everybody saying that it can be seen as a hot spot for traffic every day. And we hope that this will not be as crazy as it has been over the last couple of days, but this we're going to have to watch and see. Coming out of industrial area and then getting into the CBD, not too terrible. Right around Lunga Lunga Road and then Road A, there seems to be some problems today. Moving very slowly, and we know there's all sorts of construction going on all over the place. So approach with caution and know that you may get stuck and need to have some time on your hands. Thika Road coming into the CBD, as usual, is building up and has continued to be a bumper-to-bumper situation for some time. And then into Westlands and out of Westlands into the CBD, where we're going to have a slowdown, is Uhuru Highway. But we'll take a look in a bit. Spice FM KE, that's how you can reach us on Twitter. Let us know what you see. We're all trying to get each other moving this morning.
This is the Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Nduh Okoh, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latiff, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
2.5 minutes after 8 o'clock. Thank you very much for keeping right here on the Situation Room. This is Kenya's biggest conversation on Spice FM. 94.4 Nairobi, Mombasa 87.9, 102.5 in Kisumu, 96.0 in Nakuru, Eldoret 96.7, 90.9 in Njeri, Malindi 97.7, and we're also broadcasting on KTN Home this morning for the next 1 hour, as well as www.spicefm.co.ke and Spice FM KE, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. So let's talk about debt capital. Now, there's a man called Dr. Ndemo. Dr. Ndemo is well known. He was a permanent secretary in the government before they were called principal secretaries. He was PS in charge of information. He is a man who also played a very crucial role. You know what the PS, Dr. Karanja Kibisho, just told us about, digitization of government services and especially expansion of access to digital services for government. He played a key role. Now he works in various, still serves in government in various functions, but as well as a lecturer at the University of Nairobi. He's a professor of entrepreneurship at the University of Nairobi. Every so often, Dr. Ndemo will pen an article that will be published in the papers. He will appear somewhere and give a talk. He will, also appear in various events and workshops as a speaker. Recently, he penned an article that was titled Debt Capital, and he gave his own experience. Having gone to the US to study, he started working there, quit a well-paying job, came back to the country, and when he came back to the country, opportunities were not as forthcoming as, you'd expect. And then he ended up, doing some good business. But going back home, the people back at home would start saying, hey, so-and-so went to America. He came back. Now he's selling vegetables. This America, that guy went to drink.
Did he really go to America?
Did he really go to America? Or did he, all those things, right? And there's all this pressure in the community. Then that pressure comes into at a point, you want to show people back home that, you know what, yes, I went to Nairobi, but I'm doing well. So your neighbor or so-and-so wants to sell a piece of land. Who do they call? They call so-and-so who's in Nairobi. Can you buy this piece of land because we'd like to send our son or daughter abroad, or we'd like to foot some medical bill? You buy that piece of land, and then you put up a monstrosity of a house there, and you hardly ever go to shags. So you don't use this house, yet you spent millions of shillings building this. Mm-hmm. Back in Nairobi, you are struggling paying rent. You are struggling to pay school fees for your children. You are really running around chasing your own tail. Dr. Bitang and Ndemo is saying, look, our culture, because this is culture, pressure from a culture, is making you do those things. But in reality, you are still suffering. And that's why he calls this debt capital. Anyway, introducing, this is my interpretation of what I read in Dr. Bitang and Ndemo's article. He's on the line. Dr. Ndemo, good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Did I give the story as you'd have wanted to hear it being told?
Well, sort of, except the article is very old. I do 2 articles weekly for the Nation and People's Daily, and People's and the Daily Nation and the Business Daily. That's what I meant.
Yeah.
I wrote that article about 6 or 7 years ago, but it keeps on resurfacing because that topic is very important to us as Kenyans.
It keeps resurfacing, especially going with the times. At this time, there are very many people who are in urban areas and they are, struggling and suffering, and yet they have a home back home, and they don't know how to
Let me explain it. Where, the angle where I was coming from. I shouldn't have made the mistake that I did to do a house first in the rural area. I should have done it in Nairobi, where I stayed, where I was paying rent. Many of our seniors who were in Nairobi much earlier did the same thing by building shops in the village. And virtually across the country, most of those shops are not rented or anything. So they would put money like 100,000 and there is no return. Mm-hmm. So the basis on which we should be looking at investments, either building your house at home or a shop, is the return that you would make. Usually we say in real estate, you should get a payback within 8 years. And I know most of those shops, it will take 200 years before you get a payback. You will not be alive to benefit from the proceeds of your investments. And so I made a mistake, and it's completely dead capital. But in total, we could have put almost 20 billion US dollars, that is 200 billion Kenya shillings, into dead capital. You have seen every village has shops, and nobody's in there. I mean, from the time you finish building, and if you get a tenant, you probably get a tenant who will pay 100 shillings. Mm. So that's why we need to think very carefully that if we had invested that 20 billion US dollars into a house within Nairobi, you would have actually gotten back the payback from rent, or you would be much better off. You can pay school fees for the children. So if younger people can listen, is that there are considerations that you make when you make an investment. This is why it keeps on recurring that am I really going to benefit from putting up a 10 million house in the village? Who is going to rent it? Who is going to stay there? How many times would I visit there? So it's a very important topic, especially in a developing country like ours, where culture has been dominating and making us to make wrong decisions in investments.
But if you consider an earlier time when people primarily did not come to Nairobi to settle, they came to work and hopefully eventually go back home, would you then say that when they invested in a house that they believed they would retire to, that this was essentially a bad decision?
Oh, let me explain that. I saw with my eyes, in 93 when I was coming here, a half-acre land in Kilelesho was 3 million shillings. Half-acre land. And all my investment, all the resources I had from the US, 4 million, I put them in the village. Imagine if I had taken that 3 million out of that and bought a half-acre in Kilelesho. Today, half-acre in Kilelesho is almost 200 million. I'll be much, much better off because my house in Kishi is a small house. I cannot sell it even for 5 million.
Actually, you can't sell it at all, really.
You can't sell it at all. Meaning, I am poorer than I would have been if I had actually put the money in the city, where the returns are high.
My reference point was the example of a much, much, much earlier time than that, when people didn't come to big towns to settle.
They say the 60s.
Yes, and 70s. The thinking then, people didn't settle in towns. You worked in town and then went back home.
In fact, your family lived in
the rural areas. Yes, you were the one who moved from place to place.
That was a cultural aspect. That's why I'm saying our culture is not right in that space. You need to bring your family to where you are living. If you look at the music at the time, maybe from 60s to 70s, zilizopendwa.
The kabakas.
Yes, how people came to Nairobi wakapotea, Makarani wakapotea. Those were pain points the families went through when you left your wife for 5-7 years, you have never showed up in your rural home. So that's why it's important we say where you are living, where you are staying is your home. Whether I am in Wundanyi or Mombasa or Nairobi, and that's how we should look at our lives.
Indeed, we should, but is that how Kenyans actually look at their lives?
Well, the aspect of prestige, amejenga nyumbani, you know, if you go to run for elections, the first thing they say, akona nyumba nyumbani. But what they should be looking at, does this gentleman or lady have interests with his people? That is different. That means that whatever little resources you had, you invested it somewhere wisely, that if it increases in value, then later on you can go and build that house that the society wants.
Why do you think this is? That there's still, even till today, let's look at COVID and what has happened in the last couple of months. What is the first thing that people wanted to do? They wanted to, if they were going to, they wanted to go back home. If people wanted to, if they had to stay in the city because of a job, people were then ferrying their families home while they stayed in the city, for example, to continue doing whatever job that they had. So the overwhelming reality for most people is that home is where you hang your hat, as you know, as it's said. So it's still that.
Where the consequences of separating the family is what we have never analyzed. You stay here in Nairobi because you want your family to be safe in the rural area. They start drinking changa, you never recover those kids, or they do other things when you are not there as a parent. So there are consequences in every action that we take. It's just that we don't evaluate those consequences. And you see parenting, it's because we don't discuss it. Parenting is very complex, and the homes where the parents took care of their responsibilities, you can see the investment in their children when they are mature. So because we are blaming, right now we have a crisis of mental health. It's coming mostly to young boys, the fathers being absent. That, kama mama ako na watoto nyumbani, sawa tu, you know. So we need to evaluate these things in a more deeper way so that we don't make generalizations like a man is not supposed to be home until 10 o'clock. Sasa unaenda nyumbani kwa nini na mama anasumbua wewe huko. Yeah? So we need to look at that. So you can't just say home. Home is where your parents were born. Home for us is where we live, where it makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense to me, but also at the same time, just going back into investing in the rural area. And rural area here, I'm referring to where you grew up before you then moved on to an urban area where you now work and live with your family. There's the culture of the soft benefit of investing back at home. Whether you're talking about, well, we can say don't put up a house if you're not going to live in it, but how else can you invest back at home and you get that social capital, the good feeling of knowing that you've helped to retain the connection with the people back at home, the people that brought you up, the community that you grew up with?
We still go back. I still go for funerals. I still meet people here. If you got my point very clearly, is that if I'm living in Siaya, I should build in Siaya myself.
Yeah.
And if you are living in Kisii or you are living in Mombasa, that is your home. The rural area will be developed anyway if we had the freedom to do that. The reason why we are stuck with tribalism is because we have created reserve areas I can't invest here because this is a place for Kipsigis or this is a place for Maasai. We need to change that mindset. If I am posted in Kajiado and I'm working in Kajiado County, that is my home. That is, I should build there. That is now building a future society that is more united, and that we can discuss much later, because what is happening, China is one, but there are multiple thousands of tribes within them. They are one because the numbers make them powerful in terms of global discussions. As we have divided ourselves to the point now we are saying, I want to be governor, and the governor and the county should be countries. We undermine ourselves. We cannot even negotiate as Africa. So that is why we are poor. We are poor because of cultural practices that bring division, and the people begin to look at a small group that has no power in terms of negotiation and stuff. That's why Europe is fighting to come together to create substantive number. US is large. They want to remain 50 states and have those numbers.
Professor, everything you're saying is actually true, and I personally believe what you're saying is true. But if I understand what we're talking about here, it's something fundamental. It's called the psychological needs that people have. Ideally, I should be able to live anywhere in the country, build anywhere. Ideally, it should be so. But have we actually gotten to a point where any ordinary Kenyan has gotten to the point where they can detach themselves from what we call the so-called ancestral home? Has that detachment actually taken place?
You don't detach. Let me tell you the benefits, why I'm arguing this way. And actually, you would see the point. A lot of studies in our area is that there is no way you can succeed as an entrepreneur if you invested in your village. An outsider comes and actually succeeds because of that outsiderness. Those people who have studied immigrants always do well. The Jewish did well in Germany, the Lebanese in West Africa, the Indians in East Africa. And recently, the Somali refugees have come as refugees, and they are minting money in Italy when we have been hanging around here every weekend rushing home for funerals and other things. So if we left ourselves free to roam, that if we move from Nairobi to Murang'a and invest, actually you do better than someone who was born in Murang'a. This is a whole lesson, but I'm just taking you through so that you see the benefits of free movement of people and the people investing. In the U.S., people run away from Florida. They go to California to invest because investing within Florida becomes very difficult where the relatives are. There is another concept there where we talk about when you are very close to your relatives, you don't work hard. Yeah, people say, kama nikiwa mgonjwa, I've got my relatives here. But if I drop you in Mogadishu, you would work to hell because you know you are alone.
It sounds like something that's going to take a mind shift. For people to even come to terms with this. I mean, because just like you said, people are running home over the weekend. People don't have it that they want to do anything with any kind of permanency in a land that is not inherently their own. It has always been that, even when you're taking a break, you take a break to where you originally came from. You bury your dead where you originally came from. When you're going to marry, you go home to introduce your future spouse to the people where you originally came from. So it sounds like hundreds of years of cultural practice that would need to be changed in order for a new order to take place.
Change or adjusted?
The discussion we are having, if I bring home the points, then you will see people will begin to see. The white people displaced the Kikuyu people, isn't it?
Yes.
And displaced them from what used to be the native land, Kiambus and other places. And that displacement actually made most Kikuyus very good business people. To the extent we were saying most Kikuyus are actually anybody who had a Kikuyu name, we assume they were entrepreneurs. But look at what happened. The Luos who shifted to Mombasa, they became very successful entrepreneurs because they shifted from home. Look at those who moved from Murang'a to Nairobi, created mega businesses here, empire. And if you compare those who remained, who used to come from Nairobi, go to Kiambu and Wamarakaa Nyumbani, they remained poorer than those who moved completely from Murang'a to Nairobi to do business. It's just that we don't discuss it. People don't study, or people write papers which you don't see as news people to discuss. This is what would change. Or look at the Kisis who moved to Ngong, that they dominate the Matatu sector in that space. They didn't have land. They were forced because land was not available anymore. So the free movement of people would make us more prosperous than thinking about this is our land as Kikuyus or Maasais or Merus or whatever. So
there's another side to that argument, and we'll come back into that, in saying when you say that people have moved and then they go and stay together in a new place, forming a new community, then you can track the prosperity. But I think also what I'm hearing from you is individuals just moving, not necessarily saying that I have moved from Kisii, I am a Kisii, and I go to Ongata Rongai because that's where the Kisiis have moved to, or going to Ongata Rongai and calling all my Kisiis to come to Ongata Rongai. But let's discuss that when you come back out of this break. 24 minutes after 8 o'clock. This is a Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. We are having a strong conversation with Dr. Bitange Ndemo. He's a professor of entrepreneurship at the University of Nairobi. Dead capital, investing back at home, putting up a house, and yet you live in a whole different area. You live in Mombasa, you are building up a home in Siaya, or you live in Oloitoktok, you're building a home in Othaya. Does that make sense? Does it not? Let's discuss that when you come back. This is the Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation on Spice FM and KTN Home. Time for a quick break.
Spice FM. Njeri. Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah!
You're listening to Spice FM. The weather with Spice
16
FM.
degrees and mostly cloudy in Nairobi. We will see highs of 23 and lows of 14 today, and there's a chance of showers. The sun is peeking through those clouds. In Njeri, 16 degrees and mostly cloudy as well. Thunderstorms are forecasted for the afternoon with highs of 21 and lows of 14. It's 22 degrees, the high that we will experience in Nakuru today, lows of 13 with showers in the afternoon. Eldoret is already experiencing light rain showers this morning. Intermittently, however, we'll go into thunderstorms later with highs of 20 and lows of 12. It's partly cloudy in Kisumu at 22 degrees, highs of 27 and lows of 19, where it's promising to be a wet afternoon as well. 24 degrees, we'll see the high in Kakamega and lows of 15 today. It's partly cloudy at 19 degrees and chance of rain later on. 24 degrees in Malindi, partly cloudy conditions at the moment, highs of 28 and lows of 23. It's mostly cloudy in Mombasa at 24 degrees. Rain also here and there, highs of 28 and lows of 22. Partly cloudy conditions in Kampala will take into rain conditions later with highs of 26 and lows of 18. It's mostly cloudy in Dar es Salaam. A slight fog over most of the town, highs of 30 and lows of 21. And in Johannesburg, it's warming up ever so slightly. Mostly sunny conditions throughout the day with highs of 23 and lows of 6. And finally, for now in Lagos, it's 23 degrees and clear skies all through the morning. Partly cloudy conditions later with highs of 29 and lows of 22.
Spice FM. Spice up your life.
Okay, let's look at Mombasa Road, where it was a clog up just a while ago. It still is, for your information. And that is going to take us probably well into about 9 o'clock. Hopefully, it will not be as crazy. I keep saying that. Hopefully, it will not be as crazy as it was yesterday. But we're going to have to keep an eye on that. If you're approaching Mombasa Road, approach with caution because you don't know what you're going to find. The southern and eastern bypasses, for now, don't have too much drama. So you can use those at the point. We see the Athi River police are on the hunt this morning for those who are not complying. So that is also contributing to traffic on the Greater Mombasa Road. And coming off Thika Road, not too crazy at the moment. We will see a little bit of traffic right around the junction of Kiambu Road as you then get into the CBD via the Globe Cinema roundabout. So not manic just yet, but we'll keep an eye on it. And you help us as well. Spice FM KE on Twitter.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
29 after 8. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. The conversation continues with Dr. Bitange Ndemo. He is an entrepreneurship professor at the University of Nairobi, raising this issue of debt capital, investing in a place that you don't live and you've built up a house, and then this is all because you're shackled by your culture and customs and feeling that you must do this.
Yes, there's the aspect of the psychological needs that people have, and this is a discussion on its own. How important are these needs? And then there's the reality we now have of something called devolution. See, previously, anything in the rural areas was really just that. In the rural areas, the value aspect of it was dismal. But devolution has changed that, not altered, changed. Yes.
Which means what?
There is more money in the counties. There's more demand for this land, which was previously just ancestral land or just land in the rural areas. And there are more developments that one sees in these counties and in these rural settings than were previously seen, simply because of devolution. So even as one builds at home, there has been a change. Those dead shops that the good professor has spoken about, yes, they were probably dead for a very long time, but with the devolution, they may not necessarily all have remained dead.
Is that really changing, City? I mean, does that justify you going to put up an investment that it's not a home, for example, is not an investment, or this particular shop, so everybody comes and puts up, now they're putting up, all these high-rise apartments in the rural areas, and yet you live in Nairobi, you're paying rent.
Eric,
this thing is not giving you the returns immediately.
There's a point I'm raising here. When I talk about psychological needs, I'm talking about something like prestige. I'm talking about the need for you to be recognized by people whose recognition you consider important. All these things form a very, very fundamental core in our beings as human beings. And it also determines a lot of the things that we do. So we can't wish it away. You may be strong enough to know where to place it and where to prioritize it, but it's something that guides and determines a lot of what we do. Psychological needs.
Perhaps what the good professor is saying, we need to question these psychological needs.
We should.
And the benefits that we accrue from this.
We should.
So just because people in Shags, when I go to Shags once a while in Christmas, they'll be saying, oh, so-and-so has come back home, Eric Karibu Sana, and because you put up a huge house, of what benefit is that? Is that maybe the conversation that we should be
start with going home for Christmas and then ask yourself, why do you have to go home for Christmas? You have a whole year. Why don't you go home in the process of that year? Why must you be on the road when everybody is doing the same thing as you? There are traffic jams. There's all sorts of congestion. Why?
Connection with the family.
Precisely that. The psychological need is just as important. This is what I'm trying to say.
Is there a place for this, Dr. Ndemo?
I think what we should say that devolution was a reaction to failure of statehood. If I felt comfortable living in Kajiado and not isolated, devolution would never have come. It was failure that the resources was not shared equally. The point, what I am arguing is that the more we divide Africa into small, tiny units, it makes us non-competitive globally, and we will never overcome issues around poverty. Because, as I told you, China, they have bitterly fought among themselves internally, but they know that remaining as China with 1.5 billion people, there is that benefit of the numbers, where innovations, research, whatnot, everything, the market becomes so big for you. Here, we cannot sell even maize to Tanzania, or we can't sell even soap. Sometimes they close. Now we have gotten into the counties. Everybody is talking about the funds flowing. I don't blame them because the nation failed. Now the flow of funds to counties, every small thing you are told there is progress. But it has killed small enterprises across the country. To move something from Makueni, you are going through Machakos and Nairobi. You see people with blocking the road to charge you cess in every point.
Mm-hmm.
Now, soon we are beginning to say, this is completely nonsense. For our children to get jobs, we must create enterprises. Those enterprises must scale. They cannot scale if we are looking at Machakos County, that this is home. They would only scale if we had a nation bigger and if we had a continent. That is why Africa Free Trade Area, which still it is in nascent stages and every country is closing the borders. The reason why America succeeds is the numbers. The reason why China succeeds is the numbers. The reason why India is beginning to rise is because of numbers of people. India has states, but they have relaxed a lot of rules when it comes to enterprise. So we should not be defending things blindly that more money is going into the counties. We are seeing even more stupid investments in counties. Yeah, look at there's a new hotel, I think, which is built in Machakos. There would never be a payback. If you put 1 billion in Machakos, tourists don't go there. You can't Chomanyama. It cannot bring the returns. So we are still making those silly dead capital. In another 5 years, if he is not governor, nobody would eat there. You see? And that's all money which would have actually gone
into something else. What else would it go to?
More
I think if you look at it from, maybe there are those who would argue, if you look at it from an angle where you're expecting that it's foreign tourists who are going to come here, then maybe not. But if you look at providing a service that is needed now, and maybe there's a market for it now, looking at other businesses around there that are providing the same service and they have thrived, then you could say there's an argument for that. I mean, what I'm hearing you saying, Professor, is you first of all need to really interrogate before you put money into some investment. In thinking, how long is this going to take before I get a return for my investment?
And a value proposition, that there is value in this. Kisumu, you are beginning to see many more hotels.
Yep.
And I've written about it. It has the lake. If they had gaming around the waters and whatever, it can still take more. Makes sense to invest in a hotel in Kisumu to become a new tourist location. I cannot, even if you gave me free 1 billion, I cannot put that in Kisi, because you would only get teachers who will come to drink at the end of the month, and the rest of the days there is nobody patronizing that hotel.
No, Professor, the point you're making is an extremely valid one, but I want to go back to what I was saying. You see, Someone who's entrepreneurial and thinks in terms of business and prioritizes that thought process will agree with you 100%. And even someone who doesn't will see the point that you're making. But is that what determines what we do? Do we make business decisions purely for business reasons, or do our psychological needs always get infused in our business decisions?
Before, we used to call white elephants. Someone steals money and they put some mega thing, and you see it run down because nobody's using it. And the hotels is what most former politicians use. We have a hotel in Kisi which was put up. I don't think anybody slept there even one day. Because it was out of the town. It was inconvenient, and probably billions of shillings were put into it. And I'm saying this would have actually made much more sense if we had built an industry to process either bananas or process tea or coffee, so that we add value to our own agricultural produce. That would have made sense, because you process and ship out to sell. That's why I'm saying we should think, what contribution are we making to our people? Is it just prestige to buildings, or we do? I would rather pay school fees for 10 kids in secondary school than put up a house of my own, which is 50 million. It can't help them. It can't help you. And somebody who thinks would say, this is really nonsense. The kids here are not going to school. And
I think, Prof, you're still not answering what CT is alluding to, which is what else has contributed to that decision, the psychological aspect of it. But before you answer that, let's also hear from Victor. There's a caller, Victor, calling in from Nairobi, and he'd like to ask a question. Victor, good morning.
Yes, thank you so much. I've been listening to this, and before I make a point that I wanted to make, I wanted to ask Prof, does he have a home in Kisi? Or when he goes back to his country, does he sleep in his mom's house or in hotels? And then I fully understand the Prof, and I've read that article, Dead Capital, and I argued with it very, very harshly. I agree with your colleague who is saying that actually psychological needs that you can't just quantify to be.
The colleague is called CT Muga.
CT Muga, yes, CT Muga. I fully agree with him. There are things you do not because they all make business sense, but you're actually satisfying a higher psychological need. So what maybe Prof would argue is that do not take all your savings and put up a 10 million home, and then you remain with nothing. Maybe then invest, and then from the proceeds of your investment, build whatever kind of home you want in shacks. Nyachai is at home, is retired. He didn't retire in Nairobi. Kibaki is at home. He lived most of his life in Nairobi. We all need homes.
He's in Nairobi as well. Retire. Victor, do you have a home in the rural area?
Yes, I do.
How often do you use that home in a year?
I visit home 10 times in a year.
Almost every month?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Now, Dr.
Ndemo
started by actually giving his own personal example, and he said, yes, he invested in putting up a house in the rural area. How often, Dr. Ndemo, do you use that house?
I've slept there 4 times in the last 20 years.
Where
do you see the difference now, Victor?
I see the difference, but honestly, we all know where we go eventually, and our kids really need identity. When Obama wanted to become president, look at where he came all the way to Kenya to look for his identity. It was very important, and it made a difference in his campaign.
So it's
he had a house in Chicago. He didn't build one in Washington.
So it's the same issue of the psychological need. Now, Dr. Ndemo, now you get the question again.
I want to know whether, are you a Kenyan or are you a
Daktari, I'm a Kenyan. I come from Asumbi.
Yes. Are you, now what what do you call home?
Sorry?
What do you call home?
Home is actually where I live, most of the time, but also home is where my ancestral people come from, where my parents are. I have a duty to visit them. And when I visit them, culturally, I can't sleep in my mom's house. I'm married. I can't be having all my conjugal rights in my mom's house. I need my own home. And it's pathetic to do all this in a hotel.
But if we had very good hotels in Homa Bay, you could go visit and sleep there to justify.
If I want to take my family out, I would take them to a hotel. I can't turn a hotel into my house.
So you see, there's a whole issue here, and that's where the conversation then moves into, Dr. Ndemo, the issue of the psychological need and all these other cultural needs. Victor is basically standing and arguing for the retention of those cultural ideals.
Yeah, what we should talk is not psychological but physiological. Because physiological is when you are looking at shelter, food and clothing, basic. What you are calling psychology is actually an aspect where you want to be recognized, where you want to make people happy.
If I may interject, Dr. Ndemo, the thing is, I'm not sure if it's really an issue of needing something to eat when you go to the rural area or having a cover over your head. It's more about the connection with your culture. And this is something that an attachment. And this is something that people do not want to throw away.
Why?
Because that is where they are from. It is their life.
It's part of their identity.
It's part of their identity. It's
so
what
must
is part
this
of their
identity come
character.
in the form of a house or a shop?
We should not be talking about identity when there are millions of young people going without fees to go to school and others. I would rather go there, spend a part of that money, take kids to school. That's a legacy now. So a legacy comes. People would come to remember. Actually, without him, so and so's kid would never have gone to school. Without this, without. You have a much deeper legacy. I put up a house there where I go and sleep, and everybody around is poor. When you die, they say, walienda wakitengeneza wenyewe. So the person who gets proper legacy is the one who creates an impact within the society where they grew up, not the prestige to show that you're also successful.
So what we are saying now, if I'm hearing you right, Dr. Ndemo, is that the issue is not that you go home. The issue is that you may go home and put a lot of money in a structure, for example, that really doesn't make sense. So if you had this money, would you be then okay if somebody put up a simple structure and then use the rest of the money to influence or impact socially for good? Would be better?
Precisely.
So it's not that you shouldn't go home and put up a residence. It's that you shouldn't go home and be so fancy, and there are people around you then who may not be thriving as you are.
What I hear him saying actually is that, and even from the way you introduced it, Dr. Ndemo, you said 200 billion shillings sunk somewhere across the country in these homes, in these shops, in all, and they are not returning anything. So that shop there is not even employing people.
You see, the point I'm trying to make is this. I'm not diluting Professor Ndemo's perspective. Believe me, what he's saying is something that should be emulated, should be given thought, because it is practical and it is actually useful in the short, medium, and long term. However, there is this little thing that I keep bringing up. I'm calling it psychological needs. Let me give it a more modernistic view or a terminology. It's called neurobiological needs. Meaning, apart from just the psychological, it also takes care of those basic physiological needs that he's talking about. Unfortunately, it often takes center stage in the decisions that we make, whether they are business decisions, whether they are family decisions, but just that need, we can't run away from them. This is really what I'm trying to say.
And why is it so hard to actually unshackle ourselves? If you look at even the comments on social media, 200 billion shillings is flying. The issue is I must build back at home. I must build. Because even Dr. Ndemo is not saying that don't build. He's basically saying just
Imagine.
No.
evaluate how much you're putting in.
Yes. Opportunity cost is what they call it in economics. And he is right. He is 100% right. You shouldn't take all your resources and sink it into a house in the rural areas, even if you go there twice a month. It's not the best way of spending your money. I agree with him. However, the psychological needs that people have will trump all this sound logic. That's really what I'm trying to tell you.
Let me say one thing. Imagine Griffiths, Staré boys,
Yep.
never went to his village in London or whatever that is. Spent all his life to grow up young people, and everywhere you go, people are proud of what he did.
They call him dad. Yeah.
Yes. Why can't we have that across the country? That if I have the power to mobilize resources and see a lot of young people go through school, that when you die, 10, 20 of them are saying he was our dad. That's a better legacy. I don't know whether dead people know that, than being taken home and a few villagers come to say bye to their son who built a good house.
True.
It's a strong argument. There's a connection with both. There's a connection with, I mean, you wanting to connect with your community, the community that brought you up, and wanting to give back to that community. And very many, Dr. Ndemo would argue that even those that have put up the big 4 million, 5 million shillings homes, they also contribute to the community. Because of that home, it means that people who have a harambe for medical, people who have a harambe looking for school fees, the first person that they call when they have a harambe in church, the first person they call is our rich neighbor. And this is Dr. Ndemo, who put up 4 million shillings house. Is that not so?
That rich neighbor is what I am against. Because then it becomes like, oh, you have another lord here or something. Let's build the people so that you have several of you. I raise my WhatsApp now with the. I raise money on WhatsApp almost on daily basis to the village. You know, huyu anatakiwa kwenda hospitali, but that is not what we ought to be doing. We must be leading with ideas and saying, instead of this, let's do this.
Yeah.
And be able to think much more broadly than. That's why you went to school, to think much more broadly on issues that would help the village.
So
And
I
the
hear
people
you saying
appreciate-
almost that we should it's almost as if we're leaning or should be going towards a bit of socialism here, and then using social capital to make sure that everybody across board is developed more or less. Am I wrong?
All of us who are speaking here today, we are the bridge between the past and the future. The future that we are facing now, which is happening, and we are not debating it here in Africa, is that the fear in the Western world has fomented what you call the far-right movement, which will destroy what you call globalization. Africa is not discussing in that space. If you look at when globalization started, they enslaved us. We provided labor, we provided resources from Africa to build the Western world. The only way Africa can withstand the new ideologies that are emerging is Africa coming together as 1.2 billion people. That way, you can sit on the table and say, to hell, we can't import anything from Europe until we do this. Now, the outside world is so happy when we keep on talking that, oh, I come from Bungoma, you know. And when I'm in Bungoma, I am talking about I come from this clan. It doesn't end. Even when you come to the home, you say I'm from wife number 2 of my dad. So these are the tiniest things that have brought us down as Africans. Let's think much more broadly beyond the tribe. beyond the country, we think as Africa.
Professor, clearly you are a committed Pan-Africanist.
Yes. Do you think Liberia can tell US we don't want this?
At the moment?
Whatever they no, nothing.
Indeed.
But if they were an African, if it is AU that said we will never import this from China, China would even tell you we have restructured your loan because they know they will lose. Now, the more we keep on going down that way, and I wish you can ask my colleagues in this interview that are they really from Homa Bay or from a certain clan which dictates who wins the elections? And those are the,
It's interesting that you bring that in when we only have a few minutes to go.
That's why I said I don't want to play politics. I would do what I want to do.
Yeah.
Because this is what is dividing us. This is where the source of poverty in Africa is coming from.
Dr. Bitange Ndemo, we thank you very much for speaking to us. And also, this is, challenging our thinking, which is important, and that's what professors do. Asante sana for speaking to us, University of Nairobi entrepreneurship professor, Dr. Bitange Ndemo, Dead Capital, our cultures, our connections to our rural homes and our investments and how we want to leave a legacy when we depart or even as we leave. We will invite you for another of these conversations soon.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Asante sana. And also thank you very much to our audience on KTN Home. We've been on KTN Home since 7 o'clock. We're taking a break on KTN Home, but this conversation continues on Spice FM 94.4, Nairobi, Mombasa 87.9. If you're in Kisumu, you can tune in to 102.5. You'll find us 96.0 in Nakuru, 96.7 in Eldoret. Njeri is 90.9, 97.7 in Malindi. And even if you are far from your radio, you can still follow this conversation on social media platforms, Spice FM KE, Facebook, or YouTube, or Twitter. We are live streaming the show there. Join us again next week, the audience on KTN Home. Keep it right here, audience on Spice FM.
Welcome to Spice FM, the best exclusive radio station bringing you the best mix of the best music ever. .5 Spice FM, Kisumu. Spice up your life.
You know, this conversation on dead capital is about culture. It's not about capital. And just like as everything else, it's not whether it's 1 million shillings, 500, 200,000, 20,000 shillings that you spent putting up this home, or 2 billion shillings. That is not what people are hearing.
No.
The rational question of, did you have to put up 5 bedrooms in that rural home when you only have 2 children and you go to that home twice a year or 3 times a year? That's not the point. For instance, Daniel Juma Omondi on Twitter says, the dead capital flies against the spirit of devolution. Dr. Ndemo believes that the working class should buy property or build in urban areas and ignore rural areas. With this kind of thinking, our rural areas will never develop.
But that's not it, though. At that point, really what the thing is. I mean, if I look at both points of the conversation or the argument is that build in your rural home. That's not the problem. However, don't use every single shilling that you have to put up this palatial, what did you call it? Monstrosity. You can use it then for something else. Invest in something else. If you're in Kisi where you would be crazy to put up a hotel, then you could put up or join with others to put up a banana processing plant. Whatever. However, there's certain things that you can do with that capital as well. And you inadvertently then build the economies of those rural areas, which is what he was saying. But at that point, when you're saying you've come to Nairobi, you've worked, for example, and you're building a house in the rural area, every shilling of the sweat off your brow is going to be put in that house or in that home. Nobody's really thinking about developing the area beyond my house.
But you see, this is what you perhaps is not clearly understood. As far as the individuals building that huge house is concerned, they are developing the area.
Of course.
The very process of building that house will guarantee...
Somebody gets employment.
Yes,
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 some
yes.
phonies will
Yes,
buy from
yes.
somebody's
It's not built
hardware.
in a day.
You feed them, so somebody
Over a
there
period-
is...
yes,
Absolutely.
yes.
So the 4 million shillings that you basically invested in the local community and the
That-
local economy
yes,
of
yes.
that village.
Yes, and secondly,
All right, now the value.
the value is you, the son of so-and-so, who built this massive house, is not an ordinary mortal.
Yours is bigger than so and so.
Yes,
son.
so that prestige is not just yours alone. It extends to your family and the extended family. So they cannot be taken lightly.
There you go, because somebody's walking in the market down the street and said, you didn't hear that our brother Siti has built a house.
Yes.
And not just a
A
house.
stone throw away. Did you know that he did? So it's their glory as well.
And he has put Lami from the main highway to his home.
Imagine. Lamy we never saw before.
You see? That
And we
light
don't,
that
we
you
don't
see
even use.
There's
that
even a light,
because he
and at
uses
night
it.
we
There's
can
a
now see
gate.
where we are going. Come
light
on.
that you see shining among the trees at night. That's his home.
That's City. I mean,
So-
you developed everybody else.
Na akikuja hapa tunakulanga sana.
Precisely. Now, unless you want to tell us that there is a panacea, there's a way in which you can get people's mind from looking at things in that particular way. There are vehicles that cost less than 500,000 shillings, brand new, in this country. Brand new. It'll probably travel at 40 kilometers an hour top speed.
That
So if
notwithstanding.
you're going to Mombasa, you'll probably need a week. Okay?
But how often do you go to Mombasa? You don't even fly. Anyway, yes. So you'll buy a 13 million shillings house car.
Meanwhile,
Yes.
you can
Right.
buy the one for 500,000.
And you will always be flying to Mombasa.
Yes. I think you've understood my
Because
point.
why?
Exactly.
Because why? How can I drive?
Drive when I can
I cannot
fly.
fly.
Yes.
And then you're caught up in traffic here. Where are you again in this traffic? From Mlolongo at the Way Bridge. You're
Yes.
still doing 40 kph with the other one. That's
Meanwhile, we could have gone twice,
You
flying.
see, the other one, the 40 kilometer top speed, is a very useful vehicle. Because, one, you'll never have a problem with speeding. These fines that people, you
don't
never
even
pay
know what they are.
those fines. And you also have an opportunity to see the countryside legend.
Coming up to the top of the hour, this is the Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. We'll start the hour with today's proverb, but also we will now go back to that conversation on deep states. How deep
It's a state.
is the state? And who is this that pulls the strings?
Who's the puppet master?
Who's the puppet master? Okay. So keep it right here. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. CT Muga is in the building. Nduh Okoh is in the house.
Eric is in the chair.
And Eric is on the
The
chair.
chair.
Good morning.
Sugar and spice and everything I spice it up.
Spice up your life. Traffic.
Right, let's take a look at how traffic may be affected. So we have some heavy fog right around Kijabe this morning. You're being asked to drive with care and approach with caution because it's actually very, very low to the point of windshields of most people this morning. So be very careful there. Limuru Road coming into the CBD, past the village market, and there's a bit of a hold up right there, but you'll be fine as then you get towards Limuru Road that now connects with Parklands and then moving into the CBD, or joining with Forest Road and going either towards Westlands or taking the roundabout to the CBD. So that's where we see a little bit of an issue. Mombasa Road, yes, still clogged up, as well as parts of Thika Road, but you should be fine more or less thereafter. It's not too crazy, and we hope it doesn't get crazier within traffic hour, but we'll keep an eye. Help us keep an eye as well. Spice of MKE on Twitter. Share with us so that we can share with others.
This is the Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Nduh Okoh, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latiff, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation Room, the only way to
so
start
it's time
your
now
day.
to ask ourselves the question. So because we have asked somebody who works in state and he said, I don't know. So we'll ask ourselves this question. So in the next hour, for this next hour, I want to join this conversation, 0719-012-600 or Spice FM KE, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram. And our question is there a deep state in Kenya? And who are these who are in this deep state? Now, this is because the deputy head of state of the Republic of Kenya spoke yesterday, and he made reference to this deep state. He's not the first one to do that. I mean, I said this issue of deep state and state capture has been brought about by very many people. Civil society has said there is state capture in this country, there is deep state, there are those that have the ultimate power in decision-making in the country. The deputy president gave reference to their own campaign and their own quest for the presidency, he and the president Uhuru Kenyatta in 2012, where they faced, he says, a lot of opposition. And they were really being fought. And then they went ahead and the people of Kenya overthrew the deep state by electing Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto as president and deputy president. But the deputy president says, even now, this deep state is still coming and it still wants to derail my quest to become the president of the Republic of Kenya. Just listen to what he said.
Nilikuwa natishiwa siku hiyo, kama ningekuwa mtu muoga, hatungeunda hii serikali ya Jubilee. Kama Uhuru Kenyatta angekuwa mtu muoga, hatungeunda hii serikali ya Jubilee, kwa sababu tulikuwa tunatishiwa mambo mingi. Choices have consequences. Nyinyi hamufai kwa sababu mko na kesi ya kule na ni kesi ya uongo. Ni vile tu tunaambiwa hata saa hii. Tunatishiwa ati iko system. Ati iko deep state. Ati iko watu watatuibia kura. Hata mkipiga kura namna gani, kuna watu wameketi mahali fulani wataamua. Mimi nataka niwaambie hawa watu tunawangojea. Hiyo deep state tunangojea. Na hiyo system tunangojea. Watakuja na system, sisi tutakuja na wananchi na Mungu. Na tutaona vile hii kazi itaendelea.
Now, this is a conversation that is not unique to William Ruto. We've heard it very many times. People referring to system and deep state. People referring to a certain cabal that is faceless, that sits somewhere and decides and determines what happens. This is a certain cabal that decides that, you know what, I don't like the face of so-and-so. And so-and-so disappears. Or I don't like the face of so-and-so, and so-and-so leaves public office. Or I much prefer Nduh. And the next thing that you see is Nduh rising rather rapidly in public service.
Look, I think the whole concept of deep state, if you want to look at it, because it's not something that was coined in Kenya, right? Just looking at the history of it, it was actually from it's said to be a conspiracy theory. It's something that started in Turkey, whereby it was that this invisible apparatus, right, and that it had high-level elements in intelligence services, military, security, organized crime, even in the judiciary, and that this supposedly invisible apparatus then had networks in other countries apart from Turkey. It went from Egypt to the Ukraine, to the United States, even Italy, Israel. So it's this invisible, body that is running things in the country, and they could be private businessmen, they could be within the intelligence services, they could be within the military. And it's said to have been practiced in many countries around the world. All right? Now, William Ruto is saying that such a thing exists in Kenya, and these are the people who are attempting to frustrate their efforts, whereby they may have succeeded in the past to either shut things down or run things in a certain manner. Essentially, they're not going to be able to do that with him. I would be very interested to know if there was something that happened. Did somebody say something to him? Did he witness a certain activity or a certain incident that would have made him believe that the powers that be in this said deep state are actually the ones that are running things? And then who sits at the throne of this deep state different from who may have sat at the throne 7 years ago?
Or this is the deputy president of the country speaking. Now, he has been deputy president for the last 7 years. He has been part and parcel of government. Could it also be that he's talking about something he understands really very well?
Lived experience.
Yeah, thank you very much, Eric. Lived experience. Now, there is the other aspect of the unlived experience, meaning being in the opposite position of what you have been previously when you probably enjoyed the benefits of this deep state. So
when
you
you
then
were not steering the wheel.
Yes, and you then know what it is that you're genuinely up against because you know the powers, you've perhaps participated
And have
in exercising
wielded
the
them.
powers. So you're talking about something you know.
You've benefited from the powers of this deep
So
state.
now you're in a situation where you're thinking that benefit may not be forthcoming. If anything, the opposite may be true. That is something that is formidable, and that is something that ought to be spoken of because you, better than most people, know it and understand it.
And when you then hear him saying this, but also at the same time standing up and daring that deep state and saying, you know what, I'm going to take you on.
Word for it, bravado. Let's add political to it as well. Political bravado.
You've got to show. You can't really lose face just like that in front of people who've come to
No,
support
you
and they're showing
you
you
shouldn't,
support.
and that bravado must come out even louder. I mean, this is political competition we're talking about here.
So I think that the bottom line of this is that we are saying that there is deep state.
If it comes from the mouth of someone who is the deputy president, it must exist. At least
There's absolutely no way that Ruto can just be standing up to say, we faced, because he's not just talking about some amorphous story. He is saying we faced this monster in 2012, 2013, when we wanted to become president and deputy president. We faced it. And they came up with all manner of reasons. You guys are not suitable. You have that case. You guys are whatever. They faced it. And they pushed back at this deep state. Maybe at that point, he did not think it was deep state. He became deputy president, and then he interacted with this system again and realized, there is something that I want to move this wheel, but there's some resistance. And identified that resistance to be the system stroke deep state.
on the other hand, it could be.
Now
that-
he has tried to move it, and then the wheel has turned back and throw him off.
Yes, or it isn't moving the direction it's moving, but
want
not
it to
quite in
be.
the direction that he'd wanted to move. Because also when talking about or alluding to the possibility of there being, should we say, interference or influence of deep state at the time when he and the president were seeking the highest offices in the land, who is to say that that deep state didn't assist them?
That's what I'm telling you. Look, this deep state is not a figment, for where he's speaking, it's not a figment of his imagination. Neither was it created yesterday. So I believe that there were some benefits that he may have received that suddenly he's not receiving now. And he feels that he's opening up now in public. He may have been pinched somewhere under the table and then he's realizing, wait a minute, the things that I enjoyed previously, I am not enjoying now. And so I'm going to call you out and say, I know who you are. I know what you're trying to do to me. And I'm not going to accept it because now you found yourself on the other side of the table.
This is a lovely conversation. It is. It is a lovely conversation because the very things that people whisper about, in a previous time people talked about in darkness, or should I say under the cover of darkness, we are now talking about them in broad daylight. And when the conversation is actually started and brought to the fore by as senior a government official and a senior politician as the deputy president, then it is something that is actually definitely worth discussing.
It's very nice because then you can open your mouth and say, deep state, it exists, without somebody looking over their shoulder for fear that somebody might thwack you over the head or throw a cloth over you and then take you to some undisclosed location.
I think the term uses before they disappear you.
Before they disappear you.
Yes.
So now somebody in a position of power like that is able to open his mouth and say such a thing exists, and we rub our hands together and we say, wow, do tell exactly what happens within this mechanism of this deep state that you're talking about. It is great that it is coming from you. Now tell us a little bit more.
But at the back of your mind, Nduh, do you think this is today is Wednesday. On Monday, before Ruto had spoken, had you thought that there's deep state in Kenya?
Well, I thought about I did think about the possibility that there could be somebody who is the puppet master and pulls the string, way behind the echelons of government. I mean, we see or hear tales.
country.
So there are
We hear
influence
tales-
builders. There's a cabal somewhere.
We hear
that
tales
sits.
of this having happened in other countries. We hear tales of it happening in many African countries. And they always say there's no smoke without fire. It can't be. It's like the Loch Ness Monster. They keep speaking of the Loch Ness Monster, not because they've actually seen this thing, but they hear the effects. They've heard people screaming in the night. They've heard people not wanting to go to a certain area because there are tales of the Loch Ness Monster. You've never seen this thing, but it doesn't. The actions or the things that you see as a result are inexplicable. So there must be something.
You know, every community on this planet has such interesting stories. I'm purposely avoiding the word weird. Interesting.
Go with it.
Yes. Where you're driving in the middle of the night and you're warned. If you're in Mombasa, if you are on the Makupa Causeway and you see a bubui-clad lady.
Don't stop. Wow.
Stories have been told of people who will tell you and swear on whatever you want them to swear that they have never witnessed or they have never beheld such a beautiful countenance. However, where the pinch comes in is when this particular lady, should you stop and should she cross the road? What then amazes you is not the crossing of the road, but the noise her feet make when crossing on the tarmac. There's a clippity clop sound to it.
She's a horse.
Probably a goat.
Another hoofed animal.
It's a hoofed animal with the body of a human being. Now, these are the sort of tales that you hear people spinning.
And you engage with her. You wake up on top of a palm tree.
And you will never be able to explain it in the morning because no one else has ever seen it.
Eric
And you
is a man
happen
who
to
has
have
had
been
these stories, yeah.
alone. So
And you can't explain why you're up there in that palm tree in the morning.
Who will you tell that they'll believe you?
Naked.
Who will you tell that they'll believe you? Meanwhile, you were driving along the road. Who will you tell that they'll believe you? But you see the effects. You see? Invisible apparatus which can control things.
So if this can exist within the general mythology of communities, why not deep state?
Why not?
Because this one is actually even easier to explain. Because if you're talking about influence, talk about people who were in government, people who are industrialists, people who have a say on what happens in the economy. These are people of influence. And when you talk about people in power, usually they come into power because they have the support of similar such groupings or similar such individuals. So if you're talking about power within a state or power within a power structure, it does exist. If you want to give it the name deep state, then by all means give it what you want. But the truth of the matter is that even when you had or when you have power structures like those of the communist parties where the so-called structure is known, even then there'll be people whose names are not known, they are not even known party members, and yet they wield power.
Yeah. They are right there at the center of that sanctum of
Right
power.
there. And without their
Everybody
say-so,
else around is basically their puppets.
and more or less, without their say-so, very little happens.
Absolutely, and you can sing and dance all you want, but until and unless they make the decision of how things are going to happen, then that's what's going to be. There have been tales of the U.S., for example, and who controls the stock market, and who controls oil prices, and who controls mercenaries that go to fight in lands far off like the Middle East. Who controls that?
Who starts wars?
A particular group of people who've made a decision about how things are going to happen, and they have the government by the proverbial.
There's absolutely no way you can have
Short
this
and
thing
curlies.
in the movies, in the novels, and in literature, and then we say that it doesn't exist. So it definitely does exist in some way. The question is, does it exist in this country? And who are these faceless people? And then what kind of power is it that they wield to be able to scare off a deputy president of the republic? 16 minutes after 9. Just listen to, as we go into the weather break, listen to what the deputy president said once, on those days, at the height of the Tanga Tanga days. He dared public servants.
Makarani na mabroka ambao wanakwenda kwa magavana, wanaenda kwa wabunge, wanapigia masimu MCA. Wewe ukionekana na fulani, wewe ukiwa rafiki wa fulani, tutakufungulia kesi, utapelekwa kotini, utashtakiwa, hata kama una makosa utashtakiwa. Na wanaweka hofu kwa viongozi, kwa wananchi wa taifa letu la Kenya. Hiyo ni siasa duni. And therefore I want to say, for the avoidance of doubt, we live in a democratic nation as Kenya. And citizens, leaders, public officers should have the opportunity to make choices that they have decided on their own.
It's warming up ever so slightly
The
in
weather.
Nairobi. 17 degrees and mostly cloudy conditions. Highs of 23 and lows of 14. We know that there's a chance of rain in the capital, but we'll wait and see what that looks like towards the end of the day. Mostly cloudy in Njeri this morning at 17 degrees. Highs of 21 and lows of 14. Nakuru is partly cloudy this morning at 17 degrees. We'll see highs of 22 with a chance of a sprinkle later. That sprinkle will find its way to Eldoret as well. Highs of 20 and lows of 12. In Kisumu, it's hazy at 22. Highs of 27 and lows of 19. Kakamega will see some rain this afternoon with highs of 24 and lows of 15. It's mostly cloudy in Malindi with highs of 28 and lows of 23, as is Mombasa with highs of 28 and lows of 22. We'll take a look into Kampala, where it's partly cloudy at 22 degrees. We'll see highs of 27 and lows of 19 with some rain later on. Dar es Salaam is partly cloudy this morning, highs of 30 and lows of 21. It's warming up quite some in South Africa. Johannesburg specifically is at 11 degrees, highs of 23 and lows of 6 today. Mostly sunny conditions in Lagos at 22, highs of 29 and lows of 21. Let's take a last quick look into Europe, where it's sunny conditions in Paris at 22. There's a high temperature warning of red today. Highs of 34 and lows of 22, and maybe the rain will cool that down later. It's hazy in London at 23. Haze will turn into rain with highs of 33 and lows of 21. And finally, for now, in New York, peaking into Wednesday morning, it's mostly cloudy at 26 degrees, highs of 32 and lows of 24. We'll see rains in the afternoon.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Coming up to 20 minutes after 9, this is Kenya's biggest conversation. Fellow Kenyans, wananchi wenzangu, tunazungumzia swala la wenyenchi, the deep state, and an apparent cabal of individuals, maybe in the private sector, some of them maybe in government, some maybe in the political circles, who wield ultimate power, who decide and determine how things will go. This conversation has been there for quite a while. Now, let's just bring it up in the open. I mean, even if you don't call it deep state, whatever you call it, but in some way you refer to, this guy thinks he can go anywhere. Starting from the local communities. Somebody will tell you, I had put up myself to vie for a certain seat. And I was told, you need to go to talk. You need to speak to so-and-so. And they ignored it. And they learned the lesson the hard way. That until so-and-so gives you their blessings, my friend, whatever you're trying to do, pure.
At the community level, they're what they call opinion shapers or opinion leaders. Mm-hmm. They don't hold any official position, but they're listened to. Mm. Mm-hmm. They can sway views. The things they say are taken seriously. Now, these are people who, as you say correctly, you ignore at your own peril, especially if you're seeking a career in politics or you're attempting to seek a career in politics. But at a national level in any country, whether it is people who control the media, whether it is people who control commerce or industrialization, whether it is former political power brokers or powers themselves, but there always are people who wield influence outside those who are at that particular point in time in government.
Yeah.
And one could even argue that it is these people who are perhaps responsible for the power that those in government enjoy. Because in the absence of their blessings, those people wouldn't be where they are.
Yeah.
So there's a continuum to it. Now, in Kenya, then you throw in a term that has actually gained a lot of currency, state capture.
Ah, bas.
Okay? And to understand it, perhaps you need to throw your mind to countries where we are told there are serious drug issues and economies are more or less run on drug money. There are those who argue that in those cases, those drug barons,
they're the ones that run
they're
the
the
state.
deep state, yes. They're the ones who decide exactly what happens because they have the money to ensure that things happen the way they want.
When it comes to state capture, in South Africa, right now, there's an ongoing public inquiry into state capture.
Yes.
Because there's a report that was produced that showed that, there are some people who wield so much influence that they control all the contracting that's done by government.
Yes.
They determine how much is going to be spent on this and who is going to get that.
And their families and their names which keep coming up.
Yep.
Yes.
And there's a public inquiry into this. There are even those that will say, so yes, in the U.S., Joe Biden, the presumptive nominee for the U.S. Democratic presidential the tech ticket, has nominated Kamala Harris, the California senator, to be his running mate. There are those that will say, Joe Biden said, but he listened to the powers that be. Powers that be told him, take this one.
Have it.
Pick Kamala.
Not a problem.
Pick Kamala. Kamala will be good for us.
If you also consider, for instance, if you're talking about Kenya, the influence that the movie industry also has on our thinking. Because we don't have a shortage of whether it is TV series or movies that deal with this very, very same subject. And they dramatize it really very well to the point where it's actually really convincing. Now, there are people who actually take their knowledge and understanding from such scripts and from such sources.
So it's just movies.
Well, yes. And they believe sincerely that this is true. And it isn't difficult, by the way, to attach or to latch on, take an idea, and then mirror it into what happens in our everyday lives and say, it's exactly true.
What I saw in the movie and what is happening here.
Yes, exactly. Yes. But what makes this particular story even more palpable, in my opinion, is from whose mouth it has come.
By the way, it's not just from William Ruto. In 2013 itself, you remember President Uhuru Kenyatta went to Bomas of Kenya and he was speaking to the TNA delegates there. And this is after they had come out and publicly announced that they were going to support Musalia Mudavadi for the presidential ticket. Yeah. What did Uhuru say? He said, I had been called, I had been convinced, and he called him a demon. And he said, what? We had actually been made to believe that Sisi had to tosh him boga. All right? Until some of our very staunch supporters, maybe now those are the other side B of the deep state, maybe deep state has opposition and government. The other side of their supporters came and told them, you cannot let it go. You've got to fight. And this is why they reversed the decision to support Musalia Mudavadi.
Again,
the president himself, at that time, who was a candidate, he made reference to a deep state.
He did. But you see, that was president, yes, future, presumptive,
president.
Yes.
Likely to be.
Most probably. But this one, we're talking about someone sitting deputy president.
Yes. Deputy head of state.
Yes. Now that is not something you take lightly. You cannot say that he didn't just wake up and decide this is what he's going to say. He must have very sound reasons why he's saying what he's saying. There are things he has seen, there are things he knows, there are things he understands. And it is not something light.
Dr. Oburu Odinga is an East African legislator.
Yes, he is.
He is an experienced MP even in Kenya. He is the brother to Raila Odinga. He has also made
the
reference.
elder brother
Yes. To Raila Odinga.
Yes.
He has also made reference to the same. He has said deep state has denied us victory.
In the past.
In the past.
But now,
we're in the deep state.
So there's an acceptance
there's deep
generally.
states.
Yeah, there's an acceptance generally that this deep state exists. And that, yes, the puppet master essentially who pulls things here and there.
Or masters, perhaps?
Or puppet masters, for sure, who sit around and have, consensus meetings every now and then about what decisions then they want to make. I don't think we can run away from, the existence of such. I think it does happen. It would not be the first country where this happens. It happens everywhere. It's just like, you have stories that come out of Nigeria where Aliko Dangote is said to be the richest man in the country. It is not the case. There are people who sit about and basically make decisions about what PDP or APC are going to say tomorrow, or about what the election is going to look like in 2023, and whether it's going to be south-south, whether it's going to be north-south, whether it's going to be north-north. There are people so powerful that they can snap their fingers, basically, and a decision is made about what oil is going to be in the country tomorrow. It is there. It is a reality. It sounds kind of spooky, and you want to raise your eyebrows every now and then, but it is the reality that we live in today.
How does one
If you
get
can have
there?
countries like South Africa asking for a government inquiry into what deep state may or may not have done, then come on. We have countries like Namibia, where the entire and Botswana, where the entire diamond trade is managed and controlled by a few members of millions of people in terms of what is going to happen for trade outside of the country. Where a few members of society in Angola decide what an entire nation's oil is going to be able to trade on the global market. Come on. It's there. It happens.
It's as deep as it goes.
You see, the thing is, I think that term, deep state, unfortunately, has had itself associated with just about the most negative things you can actually think about.
Yeah.
Demons.
With regards, yes.
Yeah.
Etc., and other such associated, yes, beings. And that's, if we called perhaps what we're referring to as deep state as something else, perhaps something a little more palatable, then maybe that's what I'm trying to figure out. Because you can't call it an invisible state because it isn't.
The Electoral College?
So what we're trying to do is electoral. We're trying to remove the negativity from this. I think there's some positive aspects of this
and the moment
system.
You see, the moment yes, there is. It's not positive or negative. It's just a reality. And the reality is there are people who wield power in government, and they are not necessarily politicians. It's a fact. It's something you can't run away. And it doesn't matter what sort of government you have. There are such people. There are people who must be consulted and spoken to. Some of them are within the country. Some of them are outside the country.
And if you pay close attention, if you pay close attention, it would be folks who kind of are just always there. Okay? It's them and the members of their family. It's them and close business
I
or
listen to the
intelligence
drama being injected into
association.
this.
I'm telling you, it's got to be that way because, you want to play a soundtrack under this because that's the way it is, right?
Suspense.
They're always there. It's the guy who's always there and you really, really don't know his name. Wears a hat and a trench coat in the corner. That's what it is.
Always quiet.
But you can't step up to him.
Come
or
here,
her.
make all the noise, and then,
You can't step up to them.
he'll just nod, and the decision passes.
Look at what happens in the United States.
Well.
All of you make all this noise from January to December, right? We are going to vote. If you don't vote, this and this will happen. They say thank you very much. And then an elite group of 263 are the ones who make the decision. What do you think that was from?
Oh, no, that particular system I have appreciated because they've taken pre-rigging to a totally different
level.
Yes.
So make all the noise that you
And
want
it's
to
official.
make.
You see, the fundamental difference is it's official.
You call it corruption, but this is the way
It can
is
be
going
audited.
to be.
Of course it can. And under the banner of freedom, under the banner of God knows what else. But it's there. But this number of people determining for this entire country of 300 million people.
Yes. But we make sure that you activated your right to vote.
Yes.
Processed it, you did it. Very good.
So that this thing called the popular vote is nonsensical. In short. In short.
And then you want
And
to
then you
tell
want
me
to
that there are
tell
not
me
some
that
people who are
our
not pulling
system
strings.
is faulty.
Yeah.
No, our system is okay.
It's okay.
Okay, we'll open up the phone lines now. 0719-012-600. Is there a deep state in Kenya? And is it for our benefit, or is it not? Is it working for us or working against us? 9:30. This is a Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. You can also post your comments on Spice FM KE, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, or YouTube. 0719 012 600. We'll pick your calls shortly. Good morning.
Traffic.
Okay, looking much better in several parts of the city. It's not too crazy. They're clear on the Nyayo Stadium and Bunyala roundabouts, outbound and also inbound. So that's looking pretty good in that area of the NMA. And Thika Road is not so bad because we even have cyclists on the road this morning, so it's fantastic. Mombasa Road is where we're going to have a little bit of a problem because it's still kind of clogged up, but it'll ease up. And we hope that there's nothing major that happens on that road today. It needs a break. The last 2 days have been drama, if anything. Remember, if you're headed in the Kijabe area or the Kijabe direction, as well as Limuru, visibility still remains very low because of the fog that we see in that area. So please keep it safe. And we'll see what it looks like later on in the day. But for now, it looks good. Don't forget, you can still keep in touch with Spice FM on Spice FM KE on Twitter.
Everything nice, everything nice.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice
All right,
FM,
so is there
Nairobi.
deep state in this country, or do you think that this is just a figment of people's imagination, or just picking up stories from around the world and trying to bandicate on our own situation here? Maybe there's no deep state here. Maybe, yeah, we see everything else happening there, but just because we want to also not be left behind, we import it. And we say that there's a deep state in the country. Is there a deep state in Kenya? Is there a group that determines what happens, a group that is so powerful that your vote doesn't count, that it will determine who becomes your governor, who becomes your president, how the government is going to run, how the government will structure its budget, how money will be spent. This is the question that we are asking this morning. We want to take your calls from 0719 012 600. John in Nyandarua. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you? How's
fine.
everybody there?
Very
Fine,
well.
thank you.
Yes, I'm also fine. I wanted to contribute on this thing about the deep state. Now, the deep state has always been there, and Mr. Ruto should not be complaining. He was part of that system during the Moi era when he was in YK92, and he ensured that Matiba never became president. He was in that grouping. Now, these groups exist all over the world. We have them in America. We have the Jesuit Society there. Jesuit Society, which decides who is going to be president in America. And they also control the Wall Street. So they are all over the world. And Kenya is no exception. So he should not complain.
But John, you know, just because somebody is in the opposition doesn't necessarily mean that they are part of this deep state.
Yes, simply because somebody is in
opposition. Just because somebody worked for a youth wing like YK92, does it necessarily mean that they were therefore in this deep state, that they got to that powerful position?
Exactly. The YK92 was created to ensure that they block the opposition. And so this deep state thing that is there now is to ensure that whoever they don't want doesn't become president. That is the intention.
Okay. Thank you very much for your call. Seth in Kisumu, good morning.
Good morning, Eric.
How are you?
I'm good. And how is City?
Very well, thank you.
The beautiful lady?
I'm fine, thank you.
Hey,
Okay.
you should see the effect.
Get out of here.
Okay, quickly, I just wanted to say, if you're saying there's no deep state in Kenya, then definitely, like you said in the morning, happy Youth Day to you. To be honest, that's something that has been there, and we know they make decisions for the state. It doesn't only affect Africa or Kenya. It's been all from Europe, West to the other places. Yeah. So
But how far does this power stretch? Maybe that's what we'll ask. Zachary in Nakuru, good morning.
Oh, hi guys.
Hello.
Hi, Zachary.
How is everyone?
Fine,
Very
thank
well,
you.
thank you.
The do now looks very, very, very presentable. I have seen the how the updates that you put.
Okay.
It looks good.
It's International Youth
Now,
Day.
It's a compliment, sister.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Welcome. Now, let me tell you guys, Deep State has been there since times of Jesus, yeah? And that is why Jesus surrounded himself with the 12 disciples, yeah? Amongst them were propagandists, there were rich guys, okay? And there were very loyal faithfuls. And the Deep State is comprised of people who are very, very smart. One thing, they are smart in their pocket. They have got money that you can't count, yeah? Even if you are given all the time in this world, you can't count your money. Two, they have got what we call institutional memory. Very good institutional memory, yeah? That once Mr. Andrew there says that I want to be the chair of this cattle dip, yeah, in my village. They will look at your history, starting with your grandfathers, yeah? And therefore they'll see or they'll project that if we give Mr. Andrew the chairmanship of this cattle dip, this is his likely leadership, and this is how he's going to behave. And they are most of the time they are very correct. Yeah?
Zachary.
Yeah.
Do they have hooves and horns? I mean, it
Do they
sounds
have?
hooves, horns.
Pardon? Do they have?
Hooves or webbed feet?
Hooves.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have. I've told you that. I've told you
Well, this sounds like,
Sounds like something of the mystical.
Yes.
At this point.
Yeah, these guys. So, my friend in Nyandaro has said that Mr. Ruto was in YK92, and he was part of the deep state that ensured or made sure that none of the opposition leaders is going to take over. Yeah. And I think he is crying wolf because he knows the power of the deep state, because he has been part of it, yeah?
So it's because he's been kicked out.
He knows what he is crying about, and that is why he is, during these times of COVID, yeah? He is calling, he is receiving delegations at his home, okay, to actually try to voice his concern, yeah?
Okay. Thank you, Zachary. Thank you. Let's hear from Stephen in Nakuru. Stephen, good morning.
Good morning. How are you guys?
Salama
Thank you,
kabisa.
Stephen.
Okay. I will agree that there is a deep state. However, I'll just wish to paraphrase a question around 78 to 81, where the late president was coming into power. My question will be, where was the deep state? In the year 2000, 2002, when Kibaki was coming into power, we all understand that there was a choice. And however, where was the deep state in this? So I have no answer, but I'll just wish to just throw the spanner into the works. And thank you, guys.
Thank you, Stephen. Karaoke in Nakuru, good morning.
How are you guys? Are you all right?
We are well.
We are very well, thank you, Karaoke. How are you?
I'm okay. I want to contribute on that. Anyway, I'll take you back to far away from our continent, Africa. Let's go back to the United States, 2016. Remember, everybody was against Trump when he was coming to power. Remember that, 2016? Hello?
Yes.
Hello, are you hearing?
Yes.
Karaoke.
I'm just asking you guys. You remember 2016 when Trump was coming to power? Everybody, and especially the system, the American system, as you are referring to this deep state, everybody was against him, and even nobody expected him to take over. I remember one time Trump said, "If you use that system to get me out of this race, then American will be different again. It will be different completely from the confidence everybody has with the Americans." So the system was there, as you are saying. Did they do anything? Let's go back to 2013, when these two guys were coming to power, President Uhuru Kenyatta and the Deputy President. The Americans trying to influence by saying,
choices of consequences.
Choices has consequences. Remember that?
Yes.
Where was this system? Where was it?
That's what Ruto is saying. It was there.
Yes. Let me tell you something. Sometimes you talk as if there is no God anywhere in this world. You have confidence there is God in this world? How? Who can contest against God? If God decides, who can do anything? This time
So,
round,
from where you sit, Karaoke, just to answer the question directly, is there or is there no deep state in Kenya?
for me, for my understanding, I don't think there is something like that. All what I can understand, anybody who comes to power comes as a result of God's choice. That's what I know.
So you're saying that God is the deep state?
The only God who chooses who is to lead in a country anywhere in the world.
Okay.
The choice comes from God, not anybody.
Not anybody
any
else.
System or deep state.
Thank you, Karaoke. Brian in Nakuru.
Morning, guys.
We've had a number of people from Nakuru this morning. Good morning, Brian.
Hi, Nakuru is quite busy, and Nakuru is part of the deep state.
Okay.
But then Nakuru is where Jubilee was formed. Nakuru was home of KANU. Nakuru has been a big player of part of the deep state thing. You know, after we got independence, we lost. Those people got into power. They put their guys. They start putting guys into their like Ministry of Lands. They put guys into there. So when we chased away the white guys, they took the title deeds from the white guys and they remained with them. And the deep state apart including the death of Tom Mboya, Robert Okoh, Jim. They have killed Piogama Pinto. They have killed a lot of people, by the way. So they make sure we get what we want, and they push things the way we want it. In 2007, 2008.
Brian, is this the same deep state that you're saying was there pre-independence through the first 2 decades of independence into Moi's government? Is it the same deep state, or have they been changing?
No, it's the same. They were just growing and putting roots inside. Now it's a mature beast. It was a kid. Now, during Moi's time, it's when it was now growing, becoming a grandpa and maturing and taking root.
Okay.
So this thing has been there. It's just, people are just, I remember in 2007, 2008, electricity went off, and when it came back, Kibaki was on top. Deep step made sure the electricity went off.
Hey. Yeah. Thank you, Brian.
Okay.
Jimmy Kimani in Malindi.
Hello?
Hello.
Yes. Thank you for having me back.
Thank you, Jimmy.
I can say there are a lot of deep sticks. We don't have one deep stick, you know?
You're saying deep stick?
There is a lot of deep sticks in Kenya.
Are you saying deep stick or deep state?
Those deep, yes, the deep,
State.
deep whatever that we're talking about.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Okay.
What I'm trying to say is this, money. People are using this money as the main. You see, they have organized and prepared hunger for the people. They don't want to bring up agriculture as a sector. It's a plan. Because they know the moment they bring agriculture, everybody will have food. And when we have food, then you cannot control a nation where its people are not hungry. Second, look at 2007. The first ambassador, Rembaga, came and said, we don't recognize Kibaki as the president. And he had been constitutionally sworn in. And they clearly came and said, we don't recognize him. That was treason. You see? Because we didn't see Kibaki again.
So are you saying Ranneberger was deep state?
Very big one. Why would he say that he does not recognize Kibaki as the president? When he has been elected.
So Jimmy, just to ask you, how do you identify this deep? How do you identify somebody who's just talking? Like now, today, let's assume CT Muga just saying, you know what, this government is illegitimate. And somebody, how would you tell whether CT is deep state?
Clearly, you will see by when there is protection. There is excess protection on one side. You will see that there is amnesty. That is not a normal amnesty, like when someone swears himself as the president. This kind of amnesty, you will clearly see that due to fail of following the law and the constitution of Kenya, we have led to a lot of very many mistakes that are being seen. But if only we would have followed the constitution and the law of the Republic of Kenya, we would not be talking about anything like BBI, like what, because everybody would have respected the law. But there is something that is not clear, and this is what we are talking about now.
Yeah.
It's the main thing that we're talking about now. And there are a lot of issues which we can see, physical and spiritual. So there are others which we can see them directly and others indirect.
Thank you, Jimmy.
So these indirect issues are the main ones that form the direct issues that we see.
Asante, Jimmy. Thank you very much and have a good day in Malindi.
Same to you.
It's a situation room, Kenya's biggest conversation. Is there a deep state in this country? Is there no deep state? And if there is, then how do we identify this deep state? Now, remember, earlier this morning, we had a conversation with the PS for Interior and Citizen Services, Dr. Karanja Kibicho, and he was asked this question on deep state.
When politicians weighed in and we hear statements like deep state, then someone like myself who thinks they're fairly informed wonders, what on earth is this deep state? What does it do? Does it even exist? Because anything that could possibly go wrong seems to be channeled and blamed to this entity that isn't very clearly understood, called the deep state. Can you talk a little bit about this, please?
There are very many things that we keep hearing and also wonder what they are. You see, when people don't understand something, they try to create explanations through mystery. Deep state is a term used by people loosely to mean probably bad things from government. Because when you are told deep state, the three of you, you don't think those are preachers and bishops. That is not what comes to your mind. And I think this definition is as outrageous as it can get. What is deep state? I'm yet to understand it.
Sugar and spice and everything nice, everything nice. Spice FM.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM.
Suggest that there exists a power outside the known power structure in government, then all these ominous suggestions and meanings and innuendos come in. What if what people are referring to as deep state is just the normal functions of government, but they call it deep state because they don't actually understand it?
It's the failures of a bureaucracy, maybe, or the frustrating way in which a bureaucracy works.
Or the way in which a bureaucracy works to the displeasure of its citizenry. But it isn't anything outside what already exists. What if it's just that? Because everything that we keep saying with regards to understanding or explaining deep state, it sounds to me like very much the functions of government.
Yeah, it just sounds like a frustration and
Yes.
trying to explain why there's that frustration, but also at the same time avoiding to point a finger where it should be
Where perhaps
pointed.
it should be pointed.
Yeah, because now we start saying, there's this mysterious power that ensures that we don't eat. There's a mysterious power that ensures that the police keep beating us and clobbering us every time they come to us. There's a mysterious power that ensures that
The lights go
every election, the lights go off.
And yet, when you think about it, if you were to be honest, it isn't as though every day when we wake up, there are policemen waiting outside your door to beat you up. It's not true.
No?
No, it's not true. Kidding. And it isn't as though every time.
Some days you're lucky, some days you're not.
Yes, and it isn't even that. When there is mystery around the powers of government and the functions of government, then it leaves room for a lot of myths to take root. It allows people to really extend the powers of their imagination to whatever level that they want.
But also maybe that also gives the people who are duty bearers an excuse. They can also pass on the blame.
Say it wasn't me.
And so
or it isn't me.
The people who run this bureaucracy really enjoy it when there's mystery in how the bureaucracy works, because you'll never be able to say that you're the one who dropped the ball. You'll always keep saying, it's a system. This is how the system works. The system is frustrating. The higher ups are the ones who are frustrating everything that we wanted to do. We really, really wanted to do this.
And
for
that
the
gets
country.
very interesting when what someone you consider a higher up is telling you that there's
That
a higher
higher
So,
up. That
yes.
Can't even mention who.
So you see, it lends credence to this very, very same thinking about the deep state. Because you mean there's a higher up beyond the higher up? Okay.
Because we gave this guy the responsibility, but he got in there and he found a higher up.
And you're wondering, higher up?
A very deep-rooted higher up.
Deep-rooted.
Deep-rooted.
Higher up. The thing is, though, it could be that it's lending credence to something that... This is the same thing, that it could be that you're putting the blame on something else for all the failures that could have been made up until this point. And then presenting yourself as the option towards success.
Let me ask the question. Did the Deputy President actually use the term deep state?
Yes, he did.
How many times?
Once.
In that statement?
He said system, deep state.
Yes.
Okay.
He did.
So, there we have it. It exists.
It exists.
It does exist.
Yes.
You don't think this is him trying to just pass on the buck, or just a political maneuver here? And this is how it could also be translated. The Deputy President still wants to vie for the presidency in 2022.
He says nothing is going to stop him.
Right? He wants that. So to galvanize his support base, he's got to paint an enemy.
That's what I'm saying.
Those
And
in
to paint
opposition
yourself as
will
the one
always
that
talk
will
about this
succeed.
government failing. All right? So those who are in opposition will say, you see, this government has not been able to deliver this, and the other, and these are the failures of this government, so I'm going to be the savior.
There you go.
Now, if you're in government, you cannot go and say, this government, we failed and failed and failed. And now, no, you have got
to blame it on somebody else.
Blame it on somebody else.
I was being controlled by someone else.
Yep.
The state of things was being controlled by this invisible apparatus. And let me tell you, my presidency would be the one that will walk you through and away from the shackles of this particular
Working
system.
together with you.
You know what is
God and the 190.
You know what is
what
really
he
of
said.
interest? Much as we keep blaming our government for all manner of things, the World Bank has a certain global competitive index where they try to rank out of 139 countries the public trust in politicians. Ranking. Okay? There's Ghana, there's Kenya, South Africa, and Nigeria. Okay? Out of 139. Let me start with our country, Kenya. We are number 78. Okay? Ghana is 67. South Africa is 109 out of
39.
Nigeria is 131.
You don't trust these folks for nothing.
Precisely. So, if you're talking about trust, it isn't as though the entire citizenry of Kenya have no faith in their government. They actually do. If you go by that ranking, a good number of them actually believe that the country or the government is pretty okay. Okay? Then That is based on what they understand the government to be and what the government is supposed to do and what they believe the government has done. Then there's this bit that forms the conspiracy bit of what we're discussing. What they think the government does but they don't fully understand, and then what becomes mysterious. Enter deep state.
You have to blame somebody.
Enter deep state.
Yeah.
But my contention is deep state isn't anything outside the government. No. It's just what happens on a daily basis, what the government does, what they tell you it does, what it never tells you it does, and yet it does.
There's got to be a hierarchy of decision making.
Yes.
There are people who will make decisions and there are people who will not make decisions, and they
Yes.
work in the same government.
Exactly.
There are people whose word in a decision making process has more weight than others.
Yes.
So those ones that have more weight, those are the deep state.
And then there are people who, as you very, very correctly put it, will have a certain understanding of what happens at their level of understanding,
Yep.
but beyond that they will not.
They don't.
Yes. And neither will anybody tell them. So it gives credence to the thinking and the idea behind the term deep state.
Maybe the thing about deep state is it's not necessarily a negative thing or a bad thing, because it does exist. There's always going to be a kitchen cabinet somewhere. There's always going to be some group of people who have a better understanding of what's happening.
They always are.
They consume the information, more information than you do. And those ones will therefore have something else when they're making a decision.
Yes.
The bad part is when that system, when those individuals decide that they are going to use the information that they have and the power to make decisions for their own
personal benefit.
Yeah.
That's where
This is where the deputy president may have been pinched under the table and has decided he's going to let the cat out of the bag.
that he's not the personal benefit.
That he's no longer the benefactor. That he's no longer, whereas he may have been, it's a totally different kettle of fish now. And is letting you know that we are not going to allow, in my presidency, should you give me the opportunity, we're not going to
No, he
allow
hasn't said
anybody.
that. He's just saying
We
that
are, no, but he said
we are going to fight it.
He says we are fighting it, but we are going forward not with this deep state and the system.
We'll create
We
our
are
own.
going forward with God and Wananchi. That is what he said. And
To win the election.
To win the election.
He has not made any commitment
To win the election.
to dismantling that big state once
No,
he's
he
in
said they're
office.
going to fight it.
also of significance.
Neither
has
did
al-
he say that he didn't benefit from it
Yes.
before.
No. But he has also laid ground for explaining whatever else happens.
Yeah.
And here I mean broadly,
Yeah,
whatever else.
whatever else happens. Muwe mkijua
Ya kwamba.
niliwaambia. Coming to the end of the show. Thank you very much for tuning into the Situation Room today. But let's leave you with today's proverb.
When people who drink alcohol, my addition of course, to drown their sorrows, they should be told that sorrows know how to swim. Sorrows as
Explain.
the truth of the matter is this, problems do not go away simply because you have taken certain actions that you think are favorable. Problems by their nature, we say an entity independent of whatever mechanisms you may have, and unless you face them head on, you will likely never arrive at a solution.
You can't wish them away.
No, you can't.
You've got to confront them.
Yes.
Asante sana. Asante sana. Thank you very much for tuning into the Situation Room. Nduh, say goodbye.
Have yourselves a wonderful day, and we keep the conversation going. And please, put on your mask, wash your hands, maintain social distance. COVID still is an issue here.
Right. Deep state or not.
Let the conversation continue.
Okay.
Yes.
We'll see you again tomorrow, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. But between now and 3 o'clock, you'll have uninterrupted music, sugar and spice, and everything nice before Monday comes in to take you home on Spice Drive, and then the adults in the room later on from 7 to 10. Good morning. It's now 10 o'clock.